Everybody, we're going to start the meeting. So this is the December 12th, 2024 Town of Fishkill Planning Board meeting. And if you'll note, the two numbers 12 and 12 add up to 24, so it's a very special date. So the meeting is called to order at 7 p.m. Would you all please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. The normal reminders to please silence your cell phones and speak clearly into the microphone so that everybody can hear. We have 6 voting members present right now, with both alternate members. Bob Malvarosa, a regular member, is stuck in traffic, but he said he'll be here as soon as he can. Apparently there's something going on 684, and also possibly on other roads like 9D. But anyway, I think we'll be fine for now. We definitely have more than a quorum. Also, at the end of tonight's meeting, I'd like to ask the board to go into a closed session to seek the advice of the planning board's attorney. This is about the appeal of an interpretation of the building inspector, zoning administrator that the board filed with the Zoning Board of Appeals. So if that's okay, we'll get to that at the end of the meeting. So the first item on tonight's agenda is a public hearing. This will be for 40 Old Glenham Road, 2-lot subdivision. At 7 p.m. or as soon thereafter as possible, applicant seeks to subdivide an existing 1.682 acre parcel into 2 lots for the purpose of legalizing pre-existing nonconformities. Lot 1 will consist of 0.48 acres, and the construction of a new single-family 1-story frame house is proposed and will be accessed by an existing driveway. Lot 2 will consist of 1.14 acres, contains an existing 2-family residence that is used as an office, a general commercial yard, and a detached garage that is the primary place of an electrical contractor business and is also used by the applicant as a secondary place of business for his construction company. The applicant proposes to remove the existing commercial structures on Lot 2 and convert the 2-family home to a conforming single-family home. The applicant seeks to fully legalize pre-existing nonconformities by obtaining subdivision approval from the board. The parcel for this proposal is identified as tax map parcel 6055-16806431, located at 40 Old Glenham Road in the R15 zoning district. Is there a motion to open this public hearing?
So moved.
Fred moves it. Is there a second? Felix seconds it. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? So we have 6 voting members voting for that. Okay. Well, welcome.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman.
If you could, please just give us a brief summary of the proposal for the benefit of the audience.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, my name is Taylor Palmer. I'm a partner with the law firm of Cuddy and Fader on behalf of the applicant. Tonight I am joined by Dan Kohler of Hudson Land Design, our project engineer. As you stated, Mr. Chairman, we are before you this evening in connection with the public hearing for our application for a 2-lot subdivision. As the Chairman mentioned, we are proposing to subdivide the existing 1 lot into 2 resultant conforming lots, replacing the existing non-conforming commercial and residential uses that are presently on the premises. For the record, the hearing was publicly noticed in accordance with your town zoning law, or subdivision law, excuse me, as well as town law. As this is the public hearing, I'll give you a quick brief background for the benefit of the public. The property is presently classified in the R115 single-family 1-residence district, which abuts GB and PI, or the General Business and Planned Industrial Districts. The applicant purchased the property back in 1997. Since that acquisition, the property, as the chairman mentioned, has been used primarily as a 2-family residence with an office and general contractor yard, and currently is the primary place of business for an electrical contractor business. We understand that the structures on the property have actually been built in there since 1925, so it's been a long time that they've been there on the property. As noted, the property is presently classified in the R15, excuse me, and in this district, the minimum requirement is 15,000 square feet for an individual lot. The existing lot is about 1.62 acres, so that's about 70,000 plus square feet. So it's actually a rather large parcel in relation to the properties that are nearby. Notwithstanding the size, the applicant is only proposing 2 lots. So while feasibly you could have 4 plus lots, the applicant is only seeking to have 1 additional lot on the site. As Mr. Kohler will review, we'll go over the 2 proposed lot sizes for the particular parcel that you see up on the screen. Each of the lots will be improved by a single-family residence. The existing 2-family, if you're looking at the screen on the left towards Old Glenham, will be converted to a 1-family residence, and then 1 new single-family residence would be proposed on the newly formed lot. As the chairman also mentioned, this would also work to remove the existing commercial structures, converting the property to fully zoning compliant single-family residences. With that, just again for the record, we understand this is an unlisted action for an uncoordinated review pursuant to seeker. And with that, I'll have Dan walk you through the proposed subdivision plat.
Thanks, Taylor. So the new lot for the new residential would be the northern lot that would obtain driveway access off of Tompkins Avenue. That new driveway is in the location of an existing driveway that serves some of those outbuildings that are there now that are going to be removed as part of this application. The lot that will serve for the new house is almost an acre in size. It's just shy of an acre, and the lot that will serve for the existing structure will be about 3/4 of an acre. That will maintain its access off of Old Glenham Road. We've advanced septic system designs and submitted to the health department concurrent with the last submittal to this board, in which case we have a new septic system for the new house on the northern portion, and we've proposed a new reserve area in the event of a failure of the existing septic for the existing lot and existing house, I should say. Each one will be served by municipal water as part of this application as well. And the major changes that we made since the last time you saw us here were that we slightly lengthened the driveway for the new lot in order to reduce the slope, as was mentioned in John's letter. And we measured site distances, and again, we advanced the septic system designs to be able to make that septic submittal to the health department.
Okay, thanks. Any questions from planning board members at this point? All right. What I'd like to do is see a show of hands if there's anyone in the audience who would like to speak at tonight's public hearing. If so, I will read the rules of conduct for public hearings, but if not, and I don't see any, I see one. All right, I see a couple. Then I will read the rules of and regulations for public hearings. So speakers are asked to come to the podium and identify themselves so that their name may be entered into the record. Speakers are limited to 1 turn at the microphone and limited to no more than 4 minutes. There will be a warning when 1 minute is left. Speakers should provide only new or different information. Repetitive comments are discouraged. Speakers are encouraged to submit their comments in writing so that they can summarize their comments during the hearing. Comments are limited to matters involving the business before the board at tonight's hearing. Verbal interruption, shouting, or other outbursts or obscene language are prohibited. And that's good for now. So, all right, so there were a couple of hands up. Who would like to come up first to the podium? And again, please give us your name and address when you come up, and speak into the microphone if possible.
Good, how are you? That might be tough. Good evening,
Well,
everyone.
yeah, if you can just
Can
at
you
least
hear
get
me?
right in front of
I
it.
don't really want to mess with it.
Yeah.
I
That's all
am
right.
Melissa Thompson. I live at 42 Old Glenham Road. So my question first might be for the gentleman behind us. I want to ensure in this application for subdivision that what's going on there now, that is a violation of zoning law, is all going to go away. Yes?
You have to address the board, ma'am, with the
Okay.
question. Sorry.
So
Yeah.
can the board confirm that in the application to subdivide this land, that the general contractor operating out of that structure currently is no longer going to be a concern of mine?
Well,
I see one nod.
we'll address that after we have all the comments in. So,
Okay.
yeah, we're not having a conversation here. This is a hearing.
Okay, I'm not
so-
asking for a conversation. I've
Yep.
lived in my home for 24 years, been neighbors to that property for 24 years. I've never had to come here before, but I will say that in those 24 years, and I couldn't tell you exactly what year it did happen, but this property has been a request to subdivide in the past. And it didn't come to this stage, but was denied. And we received a letter in the mail when they asked to subdivide. I did not attend any meetings at the time. Later, we received a letter saying that the town did not approve it, and they were not able to subdivide the property. So it concerns me that while sometime, and I couldn't tell you what year it was, but in the time that I've owned my home, this application has come before the town of Fishkill prior and was denied.
Okay,
Thank you.
good to hear. Thank you. All right, who else would like to come up and speak?
Hi, my name is Neil Wilkinson. I'm a new resident of 14 Tompkins Avenue. Bought about a year and a half ago, directly across the street from the proposed second parcel. I share the concerns of my neighbor regarding the now commercial use of the property. It sounds like that will be remedied. My concerns are, I had also heard that there was proposed subdivision previously, and there was some issue regarding water level that precluded new constructions on that. I'm curious if that's been addressed already, or is that still in process in terms of the Board of Health? I'm also curious about the proposed driveway onto my street, Tompkins Avenue, providing more traffic to an already, I think, overloaded avenue. The short time I have lived on the property, on the streets, there have been numerous safety issues, and I've heard stories about safety issues going back years regarding lack of adherence to the speed limit, and animals being hit, proposals to install speed bumps that were denied, other safety mediating issues. I'm wondering if that's part of this proposal in any way. And yeah, that's about it. Thank you.
What do you mean by water level?
I think it was a septic issue. This is all secondhand. I only moved in a year and a half ago, but that the water level is too close to the surface to allow a septic system. That's hearsay, though.
Okay, thanks. Anyone else like to speak to this matter tonight? So we've heard a couple of things in terms of the comment about the commercial uses on the site, and the applicant's representative can expand on this if you like, but that's a clear understanding of the board that the purpose of this subdivision is to put the site into conformity, and the applicants have stated that the commercial uses will be discontinued on the property. And in terms of the water levels on the site for septic systems, that is something that the Department of Health will review, as with all subdivisions involving septic systems. And in terms of the curb cut on Tompkins Avenue, which is a town road, that will be reviewed by the Town of Fishkill Highway Department, and they'll look at, all the things like site distance and safety issues as well. But if you'd like to add to that.
I think, Mr. Chairman, you said it quite eloquently. That's particularly the case here. We accept any condition noting that this is the commercial use, the existing non-conforming use for the commercial use will not be continued. These are to be single-family residences. The existing two-family residence will even be converted down to a single-family residence. So there was also a mention, I believe, of traffic concerns. There's existing traffic from the commercial use, which will be far exceeding of any single-family residential use on the site. I can have Mr. Kohler also speak directly to it, but I think to the extent the board is interested, but the county health department has to review and approve any new water or septic or sewer connections for the property. So with that being said, and I think there was also a mention of a prior denied application. The applicant, I think, had pursued a subdivision years past, but maintained the commercial use rather than pursuing the any further subdivision of the site. So at this time, he's proceeding before you for a two-lot, single-family residential subdivision, no commercial use, period.
And the other thing to mention is that the town's building department has been involved in this matter and has, indicated to the planning board the non-complying issues that are being attempted to be resolved with this subdivision proposal. I don't know, Debbie, if you have anything else to mention on
I
that?
didn't receive any other comments.
Okay. All right, so I'll just check once more to see if there are any other members of the audience wishing to speak to this matter tonight. And seeing none, we should look to our attorney, Dominic Cordisco, to see if you have any comments about closing the public hearing. Any thoughts?
Yes, I would recommend you close the public hearing.
If I may just interrupt, only because we are a subdivision, if the board may consider making a secret determination prior to closing that hearing? Or please keep, I don't want, not that we want to keep a public hearing open, but just for the benefit, if we might continue the public hearing to the next meeting where the board might have secret findings before it, at which time hopefully the board can be in position to make a secret determination and then close the hearing?
There's a difference of opinion as to whether or not state law requires, a secret determination prior to closing public hearing because of whether or not it's part of a complete application. It has not been this board's practice to so require that. The board does rely on its consultants as well and their input, and in particularly CPL's input in connection with making a secret determination. And so they're just, my recommendation would be not to vary from that because you're probably not in a position to do that tonight.
And also, I'll just mention that under project reviews, we will be continuing the review and discussion of this matter a little bit later on the agenda. And my notes to myself are indicating that we will be thinking about authorizing preparation of secret documents as well as possibly a draft resolution of approval. So that'll be later on.
Understood. Thank you.
Okay. So any other questions or comments from board members before we look for a motion to close the public hearing?
No, I support closing the hearing, and I'll make the motion to close the public hearing.
All right. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, Felix seconds it. That was Anthony who made the motion. Any further discussion? All right, all in favor of closing the public hearing? And we now have 7 full voting members, Bob Navarroza alive during this discussion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, that passes 7-0. The public hearing is closed. Thank you so much. So again, we will continue discussion on this matter a little bit later in the evening under project reviews. Okay, so we have a request for extension of approval. This is for SKLJ Incorporated, Site Development Plan and Special Use Permit. Board to review the submission made by the applicant's representative on November 27, 2024, which is a request for a 6-month extension of the resolution of preliminary and conditional final approval adopted by the board on December 14, 2023, which shall expire on December 14, 2024. Welcome, Mr. Burns.
Good evening.
Good to see you.
It's good to see you as well.
So if you could please just briefly explain the request for the extension?
We're requesting a 6-month extension while we work out the final details of financing the bonds and the performance bond and maintenance bonds and everything, and the actual approval by the town board of the performance bond is on the agenda for the next meeting, for the next town board meeting.
Okay.
It was submitted last December to the town board. I don't know exactly why nothing happened then.
All right. We won't ask for Okay. Well, thanks for that. Dominic, do you have any comments or concerns with this request?
No, sir.
All right. Any questions or comments from board members?
No.
All right. Do we have a motion to approve the request for a 6-month extension of the resolution of preliminary and conditional final approval, site development plan and special use permit for SKLJ 125 Old Route 9? That would extend it to June 14th, 2025.
So moved.
Fred moves it. Is there a second? All right, Robbie seconds it. Any further discussion?
No.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? So that carries 7-0.
You guys have a good evening. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we have a couple of new submittals tonight. The first one is Century Aggregates, Inc., 107 US Route 9, Site Development Plan. Applicant seeks site development plan approval to redevelop an existing commercial site known as the Snow Valley Campground. The project involves the construction of an 8,050 square foot concrete batch plant in the area where the former Snow Valley Campground was located. The site also contains the remains of a building that served several commercial uses. The project also involves the removal of the existing wood pavilion and the existing wooden structure to the north of the existing pavilion. The applicant is proposing 11 parking spaces for the concrete trucks and the concrete batch plant employees. The concrete plant will be accessed using the existing bridge over Clove Creek that served the former Snow Valley site. Public access to the site will solely occur from the entrance on US Route 9 opposite Carroll Lane. The parcel for this proposal is identified as tax map parcel 615400683590, is located at 107 US Route 9, and consists of 310 plus or minus acres in the GB General Business, PI Planned Industry, and R40 zoning districts. This will be to refer the application to the town engineer, town planner, town planning board attorney, Dutchess County Department of Planning and Development, the New York State Department of Transportation, and the Rombout Fire District for review and comment. And the planning board will allow informal comments from the public after discussion of this application. And my understanding is the applicant has submitted the required application fees and escrow deposit. Right. Well, welcome, Mr. Day.
Good evening.
If you could give us a description of the proposal and the application materials.
Yes, sir. Mark Day, Day and Stokoza, representing Century Aggregates. With me this evening is Mr. Gilchrist and Mr. Nick Clementi. The project is known as Century Aggregates. It's located in the old Snow Valley campsite location. Currently, there's an existing wooden pavilion that was constructed during the time when it was an active RV park. It also has a remnants or an old building that's still currently there, but it's in, it will be raised as part of this application. It's in pretty bad shape. The project used to access, Snow Valley used to access Route 9 in a very precarious location, which I'm sure a lot of you know where it is. That has since been closed. The applicant in a last year had, or in a prior application to the DOT, had filed for an approved location on the southern end of the Southern Dutchess Mine. That access will also serve as access for this part of the application. The project will require or will involve the construction of about an 88,050 square foot concrete batch plant. It will be situated pretty much on the pavilion location as it is now. The applicant has done a traffic impact analysis that was supplemented as part of the original DOT access that was installed. We also have done a environmental study on the property, which was included in the application. There's also a sound study that was done by the applicant, which basically describes what the plant will generate in 3 locations, one of them being at the Sharp Reservation Trail, the Highlands Trail, also at one of the residents on Carroll Lane. That report indicated that the noise levels from the concrete plant would be considerably lower than ambient on Route 9. Other than that, that's pretty much what we are proposing.
Okay. And I'll mention that we did have a pre-application meeting with the applicant team probably a couple of months ago, I think it was, yeah. So any questions from planning board members?
No, right now.
Yeah, this first meeting is really to accept and refer the application, so our consultants haven't had a chance to look at this yet. Let's see, I'll just give a couple of thoughts, and we talked about most of this at the pre-application meeting, but the entrance of the proposed facility being directly across from Carroll Lane will have to be particularly aware and sensitive to any possible impacts on that neighborhood, so that'll be part of our review. I think we also brought up the question of whether state DOT might want to look at the traffic situation on Route 9 and see whether speed limits might be adjusted there, and or the possibility even of the installation of a new traffic signal at that intersection, which is now going to be used for, more heavy-duty purposes than in previous years.
Not to interrupt, but I think in that traffic letter, it talks about the proposed impacts even with the additional use of concrete trucks.
Right, so my thinking is that during the review process, we all will be working in contact with state DOT, and, those are, I think, appropriate things to bring up as questions, not as statements really, but just are they things that might improve the situation there, and what is state DOT's thinking about those types of things. The other thing I noticed, so I looked at the plans, and there is a sight line profile in the submitted plans. That was very helpful. It gives a pretty good idea of that sight line from the new plant, and particularly the top of the silo, which I think is 60 feet high, to, it's really, I guess the sight line was going more towards the area north of the current access at Carroll Lane.
It's taken just north of that, but the reason we picked that location was that that's actually the only place you would be able to see if you were driving. But since that time, they've actually placed some overburden in that location to even further hide it. So I'm not sure anybody who rides by it, you'd struggle to see down into Snow Valley. It was difficult to see even before this, but now it's impossible.
Yeah. So at any rate, at some point during the review process, the board will be asking for submission of a detailed elevation drawing of the facility and the silo, the normal building colors, materials, textures, that sort of thing. So those were my thoughts. Any other questions or comments from? Yeah, go ahead, Bob.
You guys already kind of cut into the thing and put
poured like a concrete pad going towards the road already. So is that where you're going to be coming out?
You're talking about the new entrance?
Yeah.
That's that entrance, yes. That was the one that was installed on the south end of the site.
Yeah.
That will be the entrance for this site.
All right.
So no longer is that the one that was at the top of the hill.
By the Snow Valley.
Yeah, that was
It was kind of diagonally from Thale.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Mr. Chair.
Yep.
The only thing I spoke to Mark earlier about it, but the only question I initially looked at is just the sound. And I know they did a sound impact study, but I also saw that they start at 5 o'clock. I just want to make sure that the, ambient noise at 5 o'clock in the morning might be different than ambient noise, at like 10 o'clock during the day. So
I spoke to the applicant about that. The reason why they start at 5,
yes.
it takes about an hour and a half to get the batch plant up and running, to get the computers, get the water, and get pretty much ready to make a mix. It's not something where you just go in and click a button and it's making concrete. So they've got to do a lot to the plant to get it active.
Okay. All right.
And the other question on the sound is whether there might be any types of impacts from trucks entering or leaving the site, which I don't think the noise study really looked at that aspect.
I think if you stand on Route 9 in that location, you're well over 90 decibels just because of background traffic noise.
Yeah.
So I don't think anything that we would do would be generating more.
All right, well, something I was thinking about, so we can talk about that more perhaps.
And is the residential neighborhood pretty far from the plant?
There's Carroll Lane, which is
Yeah, I know.
across from the entrance, but that's probably 25 to 3,000 feet away from the plant.
Okay.
Yeah, so my impression is the plant itself is quite a large distance, as you say, from the Carroll Lane neighborhood. It's really more the new intersection at
Correct.
Carroll Lane is where trucks will be coming in and out, and that could be somewhat of an impact on the residential
And
area.
even Carroll Lane also has a pet hospital also, right?
Yes.
Right on the corner.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So even that is hopefully pretty far from the plant.
The applicants met with the people on Carroll Lane, just so you know, they're fully involved in what's going on over there. So,
All right.
Oh, I'm sorry.
John?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Are you going to be doing any mining or excavation of that area
No.
to get the stone? So the stone's going to come in ready to go, ready to be put, to be mixed? You're not going to be bashing stones,
No.
crushing stones, none of that?
it's not a mining application. It's basically just a batch plant. That's really all its purpose.
So basically, the stone comes in, or whatever material you need, and you just mix it in these big vats?
Correct.
Felix, would you have
No.
something else? Oh, okay.
Good, thank you.
Anyone else at this point?
Nope.
All right. Dominic, I just wanted to check with you if you have any comments. And one thing I wanted to ask, I know when we had the pre-application meeting, we talked about whether this application would require a special use permit. And I think there was I know there was a email from Mr. Petrus in the building department where he addressed that aspect. And
That's correct. And he determined that it was not required.
yeah, so
Yes.
did you have any input into that?
I did.
So what-
I did. He did ask that I look at this as well, having not seen the application, but being part of the pre-application meeting.
Yeah.
And also understanding in general the fact that this was not proposed to be mining, but fell within the industrial uses which are permitted as of right in this zone.
Okay. All right, any questions? I know this hasn't been referred to CPL yet, but if John or Liz, if you have any questions or preliminary observations, feel free.
None for me at this time.
And I know I I think I made a lot of comments at the pre-app meeting to try to scope out what they would be looking at, and I know that we talked about the possibility of some kind of habitat study, natural resource, because there are, some features on the site, and we'll take a look at that. And we'll have our traffic person look at the traffic study, and I think we have somebody on staff that looks at noise, so we can have somebody look at that too, so.
Okay. All right. Well, let me check now to see if there's anyone in the audience who would like to make informal comments tonight regarding the Century Aggregates proposal. All right, I see one hand, I see a couple of hands being raised. When you're recognized, please come up to the podium and state your name and address for the record, and we'll give you 4 minutes to speak, and we'll give you a warning with 1 minute. So who would like to come first? Okay.
Good evening. Russell Malley, 142 Old Route 9, Fishkill.
Welcome.
I understand the way it's zoned, that this is all available to be done and built, but this is terrible. 310 acres plus of pristine woodland. You're going to destroy and kill wildlife from shrew to bear, from hummingbird to bald eagle. This pristine woodland is beautiful, and it has many wetlands and watercourses throughout this property, and it's a shame that this is able to be done, because there will be expansion. You don't have to buy 310 acres and just build an 8,000 square foot building. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Thanks. All right. Would you like to come up?
Good evening. Ed Bushek, Carroll Lane resident, and I have a number of points that I will be making, and I also will be submitting an email throughout the course of let's say, throughout the course of these hearings. As you know, we already have Thale Mine on Route 9. We have a concrete ready-mix plant right across the street at Cranesville, which has been a mess for 25 years. I don't know why we need another concrete mixing plant in that same area. As the gentleman just said, it's going to destroy the natural wildlife that lives there. There's very important rattlesnake population. I know they did a study looking for rattlesnakes, but they did it on June 1st, which is too early to really see the rattlesnakes. I've seen the rattlesnakes in that area. And have you ever seen a concrete mixing plant? Is this just the beginning of, a segmentation where they're going to start with this and then expand and expand, and that whole Snow Valley will be covered with concrete and cement mixing plants? So let me check my notes here. Century Aggregates is part of a family of concrete businesses known as, I think it's bonded cement or bonded concrete. So they might have 8 different locations throughout New York State. I suggest you look at those sites and you can see what's going to happen to Snow Valley. As a kid, I used to swim in Snow Valley. That's where I learned how to swim. Beautiful place. I'd like to see it kind of stay the way it is. Now, this is at the gateway of Fishkill. very important in the comprehensive plan that it looks nice. And I know they say you can't see anything, but 60-foot silo, that's going to spread dust, cement dust. We have a senior mobile park just over the border in Phillipstown, 80 aged residents. And this dust is not going to be good for them. The noise either. That work schedule, 5 a.m., is terrible. And the traffic problem, there's a school bus stop right there at Carroll Lane. And you have a lot of traffic going into Companion Animal Hospital. And you're going to have the entrance and exits of the concrete trucks right across from there. And I know it's been DOT approved, but I know also that the town submitted a resolution last December to DOT to reduce the speed to 45 miles per hour from Dutchess Mall to the Putnam County line.
Sorry to interrupt, but we're coming up on the 4-minute limit.
Okay, good. I don't think I can talk much longer. I don't know how these lawyers do it. They can, talk calmly.
We get paid by the word.
That's good. So, as I say, we're friends. The residents of Carroll Lane appreciate Mr. Clementi and his family, and he's helped us with the Revolutionary War monument wall. He donated that to us. We're very appreciative of that. But we also have to look to the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. Is there anyone else in the audience who would like to speak to this tonight? Okay, well, there will be more opportunities during the process, and we will at some point have a public hearing formally on this matter. But for now, this is just to accept the application. Any other questions from board members or from the applicant?
Just, would this be on the next agenda, or?
Yeah, normally what happens is if the board accepts the application, we'll refer it to certain individuals and groups tonight, and then it's normally scheduled for the following meeting. And we will refer to...
As long as he completes his package.
Oh, okay.
Your question is, though, there's really nothing we should resubmit?
No.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
So, on that note, is there a motion to accept the application for the proposed Century Aggregate Site Development Plan at 107 Route 9, and to refer this application to the town engineer, town planner, town planning board attorney, Dutchess County Department of Planning and Development, New York State Department of Transportation, and Rombout Fire District for review and comment?
So moved.
Felix moves it. Is there a second?
Second.
Bob seconds it. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? One opposed. And any abstentions? All right, so that carries 6 in favor, 1 against, and no abstentions. So the board will continue discussion with input from our consultants at the January 9th, 2025 meeting.
Thank you very much. Merry Christmas, everybody.
Thank you. You too.
Happy holidays.
Thank you.
All right, the second new submittal that we have tonight is 300 Westage Hotel Site Development Plan. The applicant is seeking site development plan approval to construct a 4-story, 66,150 square foot hotel with 107 rooms and associated parking. project site is currently a developed site with an existing 117,600 square foot office building with 352 parking spaces. The proposed hotel would occupy an area currently being used for parking. There's existing access to the site via Westage Business Center Drive, and no changes are proposed to the existing access. The proposed project includes a shared parking lot with the existing office building and consists of 250 parking spaces. The applicant is seeking a waiver for the required parking and loading spaces. Project also requires an area variance from the Zoning Board of Appeals for encroachment into the rear yard setback. The parcel for this proposal is tax map parcel number 615500984452, located at 300 Westage Business Center Drive, consists of 6.34 acres in the PSC Planned Shopping Center Zoning District. And this will be to refer the application to the town engineer, town planning board attorney, Dutchess County Department of Planning and Development, New York State Department of Transportation, and the Roundabout Fire District for review and comment. And again, as with the last proposal, the planning board will allow informal comments from the public after discussion of this application tonight. And the applicant has submitted the required application fee and escrow deposit. So, welcome.
Thank you.
Can I help you, Kyle?
Sorry, I have not used Adobe.
Can I help you?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Can you just go to the site?
It's a little weird.
I'm lost without Bluebeam.
I hear you.
Right.
So why don't you introduce yourself
Yes.
and the applicant team, and then as we get things ready on the screen to describe the proposal and the application materials.
That sounds good. Kyle Ahern with Labella Associates, the civil engineer for the project. Also here we have Neil Alexander from Cuddy & Fader, the project attorney, and Bobby Patel, the applicant with Riverlink Hotels. Can we go to C-130?
If you use the,
Just the arrow keys are good?
yep, there you go.
There we go. All right. It doesn't want to do that page, did it?
Slide the scroll on the side, there you go.
There we go. We're off and running now. Should be one more. Here we go. Okay. Thank you for reading the project description, so I can skip that part here. But just to give a brief overview with the plan up. So this project is located, as you mentioned, at 300 Westage. There's an existing 117,600 square foot office building that will remain as is. We are confining the project area to a portion of their existing parking lot. This would be the southeast corner of their parking lot. You know, before we even got into this process, we did do a parking study because we knew that would be you know, the driving factor here. So that parking study was submitted to the board. It's contained within the traffic study, which I'll also briefly summarize for you. The parking study was done earlier this year before school let out. The result of it was the existing office building uses, at maximum, uses 123 parking spaces. Just to kind of describe some of the decisions we had to make during the parking study, you know, we understand you don't want to drive into a, you know, multiple hundred parking space parking lot and need to find that last space. So we did do a couple things that we think are a little conservative, just to give us a little bit of breathing room going forward. So there are some spaces on the west side of the project site, I should say, that are not on the property for 300 Westage. They're actually on 400 Westage. While we were doing the study, we did see some people parking there using the office door. So we counted them as far as the demand for the office space goes. But then when you go to our numbers where we say how many we're providing, we did not include those spaces. So just to kind of point that out. So from there, we did work with the owner. They are currently, or at the time of the study, I should say, they were 70% occupied. So we extrapolated that out to, if they're 100% occupied, how many spaces that would require. That gets us to 164. If you go into town zoning, the proposed project requires 112 spaces for the 107 rooms. So the long and short of it is, you then apply the shared parking multiplier. The maximum parking required is estimated to be 242 spaces. That's between 10 a.m. and 12 p.m. on weekdays. Obviously, on the weekend, the office will be more or less empty. So that's that weekday time is the peak parking demand. That 242, again, is what we consider to be conservative based on the fact that we're not including some of the spaces from 400 that are being utilized. Excuse me, there we go. So of the 242 minimum, we're currently providing 250 with this layout. And then the layout itself, we're not making any changes to Westridge Business Center Drive. We are essentially taking this island here, landscaped island, and we are maintaining the landscape berms within that area, and then we're plopping the hotel down next to it. So we're trying to maintain as much as we can. As I also mentioned, the outside perimeter is fully within the existing parking lot. We have 2 landscape berms here, similar to the existing parking lot. We're replacing the trees that are being removed for the construction. Impervious coverage for the project is actually reduced from what's out there currently. So yeah, I mean, it's a redevelopment project by definition, and we think there's some minimal impacts as a result. We did do the traffic study, as I mentioned. The long and short of it is the build versus no build scenario. The maximum increase in delay for any of the movements is less than 1 second. And the study did take into account several of the other projects that are proposed for the area. So we did have the Continental Commons project, the warehouse proposed next to Home Depot, the Snook Road Medical Park, and Chick-fil-A. I think those were just kind of the main things we wanted to touch on tonight. Knowing you guys have not accepted the application yet or reviewed it more thoroughly. So, yeah, I think that's all we have. Neil, did you want to say anything?
Sorry, good evening, good to see everybody. I think the only question is, and I don't think you usually do this, but we acknowledge it's an unlisted action, so if you wanted to start the circulation process for lead agency, we'd be comfortable with that, but it may be premature, so.
Yeah, we would normally wait at least till the following meeting, assuming this is referred to our consultants. Should be.
Agreed. I mean, that gives CPL an opportunity to review the AAF and make sure that, there's nothing that's missing, not to say that there is, but to confirm that and to provide them with the opportunity to comment on the application and any adjustments that might be made prior to circulation.
Yeah. And I think we'll probably want to be specific on the referral to CPL to make sure that the traffic engineer will take a look at the parking and traffic studies. Any questions from board members?
My only, when I was looking at this initially, just the parking was the one thing that was concerning in a sense. First, I know that they're taking parking spots where you're going to pay, right? How many spots are you taking?
So there's 352, I believe, existing. So we are reducing, like I said, of the 352, throughout the whole workday, the maximum use is 123. And then we took that number and said 123 parking spaces, yeah. So yeah, at its most utilized point of the day, they're only using about a third of their parking out there. you know, whether or not they will have 100% occupancy, you know, it seems unlikely they'll ever be right at 100%, but it is possible. So we did assume that that's going to be the case at some point. And, you know, so we then took that 123 spaces and applied the same ratio of, you know, spaces being used to the amount of tenants occupying the building. And then we got to that, that's how we got to that 164 spaces number. So there's that, what the office is currently, you know, what the demand is. Then you look at the hotel, what the demand is for that based on town code. And then because office and hotel don't use their parking at the same time of day or even, you know, throughout the week, there's specific days that they're using their parking. You know, there's Urban Land Institute has multipliers you can use for every hour of the day for, you know, weekday versus weekend. And so you can see that between 10 a.m. and 12 p.m. is where you'll have the most overlap. So you'll have the most people demanding parking at that point of the day, and that's how you get to the 242 spaces. So again, that's 242 on the busiest day. You know, if the office is 100% occupied, if the hotel is also 100% occupied at that time. So, you know, and that's on top of the not counting certain spaces that we know, you know, we saw were being utilized by the office.
It is kind of a strange situation with the parking lots there, because I've been over there quite often, and sometimes when I go, there's hardly anybody parked in the vast part of the parking lot that you're talking about. And other times, it actually is fairly, not, I wouldn't say full, but fairly well used. So it's kind of going to be tricky to, you know, average it all out and see what the actual situation will be like with the two shared uses on the same parcel. So I think, yeah, I think Felix, you're right, that is going to be one of the main questions we'll have to look at.
And if I may add, there's generally cross usage between the various different businesses. So at very busy times, people cruise the parking lots and they'll park anywhere. There's an empty space and walk. So to the extent that you reduce parking, you may not just impact your office building and your hotel, but you may also impact other businesses in the area.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's why we also wanted to make sure that the approach we're using for that study was conservative. You know, we didn't want to say, well, they're parking there already, so we'll just continue to rely on that for the demand number.
Any other questions or comments from board members?
Have you checked for that you will have use of enough water for that site?
We do know that.
With the
So yeah, so we'll be going to the DOH earlier than we normally would. Normally we'd wait until the negative declaration is received to submit to the DOH. In this case, we will be going earlier. We haven't submitted anything to them yet, but we do know that the sewer pump station, anyway, I know that's not water, but sewer, had contemplated a 100, I believe it was 112 room hotel on 550 Westage, which became the self-storage building. So we know, at least for sewage, there is capacity for a hotel that's slightly smaller.
Total height of the building?
It's about 43 feet. I actually had a question for Joel on that, because that's to the parapet, and then there's some mechanicals on top of that.
4 story?
4 stories, yes.
Is that, excuse my ignorance on that one, but is that in accordance to the rest of the buildings in the area, John? As far as the height?
I don't know. We'll have to go over and take a look at them all.
Yeah, there's a number of other 4-story buildings.
I mean, that's apparently what is allowed in the PSC zone. So I would think a lot of the other hotels probably would be at similar heights, but we should take a look at that.
Okay.
Is this a for spec, or is it for a particular hotel?
So this is a Home 2 Suites hotel.
I have a question.
Sure.
Go ahead.
Have you done a study? Do we need another hotel?
So the applicant operates a number of hotels on the 84 and the 95 corridors. So they are, very well versed at what is currently in demand, and that's the reason they're going with an extended stay hotel instead of a more traditional use, because that is what is currently in demand.
Because right now, we have a memorandum on storage units. We don't need any more. And I have to wonder, with the hotel, if you're asking for a waiver for parking, a waiver for the loading spaces, you need a variance for encroachment, maybe this isn't the place for a hotel that size. And like Bob asked with the 4 stories, do we need another hotel?
Yeah, so there is market demand. To go back to the hotel, or the height, sorry, real quick. 43 feet is well under the zone, which is 70 feet maximum. We did contemplate a smaller footprint hotel that was 5 stories, but our opinion, and open for feedback, but our opinion was that lower height that is consistent with the other hotels and other uses in the Westage Business Center would probably be more appropriate. So that's the main reason that it's pushing us into the rear setback. And actually, thank you, because I meant to bring that up earlier and discuss that a little bit with you guys while we're here. That setback, and it's just easier to see on the site plan, so excuse me real quick. There we go. So you can see here the setback is measured from the property line, obviously. In this case, 84 is located just south of the site, which is, when you're looking at the plan, that's the left side. The on-ramp to I-84 from Route 9 is located, I'm sorry, this keeps popping up. It's essentially a curve that then connects to I-84, obviously, as an on-ramp. The property line itself does not follow 84 with a consistent offset. It juts into Westage here, but within that area, there's, it's vegetation, essentially. So as far as maintaining a buffer goes to the property line, or to 84 more specifically, I should say, if you were to draw just a straight line or even a curved line would give us even more space. But so the straight line, you give that 100-foot offset for your setback, and we're outside of that. So the only reason we need a setback in this case is because this property line it's not shaped to follow the I-84 actual, the actual location of the highway. So, and we'll definitely be, we can discuss that further, and we can provide figures that shows that a little more clearly. But that's, that's essentially what's pushing the building into the setback. This setback, if it went straight across the back of the property line, you can kind of see it here, it would come straight down within the drive aisle. I'm trying to just extend it from here's the other setback, the rest of the setback, I should say. So, I mean, if you want the applicant to speak more on the market need, he's probably a better person to talk about that than me. But as far as
I don't think the question is necessarily about parking.
No, I meant the need for a hotel.
Oh, another hotel?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, and it's a permitted use, yes.
Can I ask you for traffic, or for parking, because it goes back to parking?
Sure.
Because it's a homestay hotel?
Home 2 Suites, yes.
Yeah, which means they stay there for a longer period of time.
Yes.
Will that make a difference in the parking? Because a normal hotel, they're in and out, and then you have that big gap during the day.
Yeah, no, it doesn't have much of an impact on parking. There's actually even, you think extended stay and you're thinking they're staying a much longer time. There ends up being longer stays, but it's only by about a day or two is the.
Well, I was just thinking about parking though.
Right.
Not,
Right, yep, no, it's a similar patterns as far as parking demand goes.
That whole side of Westage is going to be built up eventually. We have a lot going on over there. I just have to wonder if I could fast forward, everybody in the town of Fishkill should be thinking about this. If we can fast forward 5 years, when you're driving down 84 coming into Fishkill, what is it going to look like? We have potential storage units, the Gap, now another hotel, industrial complexes on the side. I just wonder, are we putting too much in a small space? It's a 5-pound bag. Are we putting 20 pounds of stuff in it?
Well,
And
in this case,
I'm very
yeah.
concerned about what Fishkill's going to look like in 5 years, 10 years, because a lot of these projects haven't even gotten started yet.
Yeah, I can appreciate that, and that's, I mean, we think this is actually one of the best things about this project. You know, you have an unutilized parking lot. We're
But
not.
it's not unutilized. It's not.
Well,
I live
a
over
third
there.
of it is.
It's not constantly unutilized.
It's, okay. It's underutilized. So, you know, this project is fully within the envelope of the parking lot. The only vegetation we're removing is within the islands of the parking lot, and that will be replanted. There's substantial new landscaping going in around the hotel itself. We maintained the 3 trees on the north side to try and keep that, as you approach the building from Westage Business Center Drive, we were trying to maintain that same, what Westage looks like. So we think this is a much better option than another site that you don't need a rear setback, but you're, clear cutting 5 acres to get a hotel in there.
And I understand what you're saying, but I respectfully disagree with that. Just because you have what you think is unutilized space doesn't mean you have to put a hotel there.
So, I mean, we're pretty early here, and we're going to work through the issues. I'll tell you that, we've been tenants at 300 Westage for over a decade, and I'll tell you more nights that I've walked out of that building that when it's dark, and I've had to park, I've parked in the last row for various reasons, like potholes that were in the middle of the parking lot many years ago. It's pretty unnerving. So to activate that, I think would be great. I think it's also really important contextually to recognize that this is previously disturbed area. It's a parking lot. And we're reclaiming the parking lot and creating activity. And relative to that 30-foot setback, what are we 30-foot setback from? We're set back from a cloverleaf on the intersection of 9 to Interstate 84, and it's the on-ramp. And because of the way the state did the taking back when they built Interstate 84, instead of being an X for basically through the intersection, you have a bow, and that bow went into our property. But remember, so you're saying we're 30 feet set back. We're missing that 30 feet, but there's already parking lot in that whole area. There's already usages in that area. There's already been disturbance, so it's not like we're asking for a variance in order to actually result in new land disturbance. We're looking to actually ask for a variance, which obviously we'll talk about with the ZBA, but obviously in coordinated review, you'll be a lead agency. We're asking for the variance to utilize it in a different way. It was already disturbed. And in the end, with the landscaping we're doing, we're actually going to decrease the impervious out there. So, I mean, I think the reason why Kyle was bringing up some of these were some of our engineering assumptions, and I think we had this discussion last time with the self-storage, where we talked about, do you want us to go taller, right? We talked about going taller in that context, and you said, no, we really like you to do 4 stories. So that informed our analysis here, go 4 stories, right, as well. And the other hotels in the area are 4 stories. So we've started with working assumptions that if you're staying inside the envelope of what's already disturbed, if you're staying at a height, right, that berm has 3 really mature trees, right? We said, let's not crash through for the sake of 30 feet. It's already disturbed, that berm.
let's not change the traffic patterns, which were the assumption for approvals down at 400, 550, and 600 Westage. So those were our underlying assumptions. And just like we did with the self-storage, if we're holding incorrect assumptions, we'll get them out there as we go forward, but at least that's where we were informed from, originally. And as you know, there are no historically significant, known areas in proximity to this part of Westage as we went through with the self-storage. So again, same thing with, how we analyzed and designed our project and staying within the existing envelope. I mean, I think many of you may have seen Patterns for Progress came out with a great report today about reusing shopping centers. And that's what we're looking to do here. I don't think we're going to try and, go under, when they adopted the 2018 amendments to seeker, you'll know they created a whole new one for adaptive reuse and repurposing of existing structures. Now, we didn't have an existing structure, but you have an existing 50-plus-year-old shopping center, and obviously it goes through evolutions as time, and this is part of the evolution. I mean, there's another applicant, I think, later tonight in another part of the southern part of Westage doing the same thing relative to, in that case, it was a structure, but that had been vacant for a while with the Boston market. So that's really what's informing us, and I just wanted to share that because that was what the design ethos was here, and that's how we're coming to it. So we thought that the variance, at least ab initio, was a worthwhile trade-off since it didn't involve new disturbance.
Could I ask Mr. Patel if you're willing to just come up and talk briefly about the concept of the extended stay hotel that you're proposing?
Sure.
And perhaps how it compares with some of the other hotels in that area, because
Sure.
there are quite a few of them.
Sure. Bobby Patel, Riverlink Hotels. Thank you for having us. So Home 2 Suites is a Hilton-branded hotel. We own the Hampton Inn, which is across the street. Home 2 Suites is geared toward more longer-term stay, so it's a larger room. It provides a suite-type room, sofa, living room area, a small kitchenette, and then it's geared towards corporate clientele, government, on the weekends to families who are traveling for sports or longer-term stays. It's more in, I don't know if you guys have Residence Inn by Marriott. It's a lower level of that, a mid-scale hotel that offers a longer-term stay and gives a more comfortable stay, whereas our Hampton Inn usually is for corporate guests who stay 2 to 3 nights during the week, or a family comes for a weekend or driving through. And there are a few Home 2 Suites in the area that have opened up. One in Middletown that has ramped up very quickly. The hotel does really well, and there is a need all throughout the country for extended stay hotels, and we feel Fishkill is a great market for it. Any questions?
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Bob, you have a question?
No, just, getting back to the parking thing and everything else. I mean, so you're taking about 100 spaces, so you have 107 rooms, so let's just say you don't have full occupancy, but you got pretty good amount, so you could have 100 cars possibly there, because if everybody takes one room, you got employees and everything else, and I'm trying to wonder what the office building across the way that's been, it's various occupancies inside there. I guess originally they had 352 spaces, but you also have, which like everybody says, I mean, there could be spillover for the medical office right there too. So will there be a crunch down, reducing down to 250 spaces is just, just kind of like a little bit of a concern.
Right, so as each site plan has come to the planning board, and obviously the 400 Westage was years ago, it's not the same board now, but when every applicant has come before the board, one of the first things you do is you make sure that you're providing adequate parking for your use. In Westage specifically, you do have the ability to share parking as part of the maintenance association agreement that everyone is a part of, is that you do have the ability to share parking, which is helpful if one use is having a particularly busy day. There are other options for parking. So, we didn't take that into account in the parking study as far as, a broader scope for the parking study, but essentially by providing ample parking on each parcel, you are effectively ensuring that, you know, you have parking that can support your site plan and your parcel. And any additional sharing
I know things
about
have changed,
that.
and like, you know,
Yeah.
the occupancies of some of these buildings is, you know, especially the office buildings, a lot of people, you know, swing like they work 3 days a week or 2 days from home, back and forth, and, you know, so it's not, but I just still see it being, like somebody said, it's getting a little tight.
I think, if I may, we hear you, and there's a lot of granular information in the traffic study. You know, John and CPL are going to go through that, I'm sure, and they'll have comments and guidance for you, and I'm sure we'll be paging through the traffic in parking study and all the assumptions and get corrections if we made other assumptions incorrectly. But, you know, we're early days. We hear you that is a concern, that you want to make sure that there's rough proportionality in this area between all the various users. And we definitely hear you on that. And, you know, we look forward to having, you know, that discussion, and sort of the math kind of goes all over the place here. We'll have drawings up. Like you said, the parking and traffic study is already, at first blush, we knew. You know, it's pretty thick, so, you know, we can get into that, you know, at a future meeting gladly, and we hear you.
And just to add, you know, since it's fresh on everyone's mind, just to add 2 more points to answer some of your questions about the parking study. You know, as I said earlier, the parking on the western side of our parcel that is on the 400 Westage property, we included in our count. So that is counted as office demand, even though there may only have been a couple people using those spaces that were going to the office, and the rest may have been to 400, but we didn't sit there and say, where are you going, you know? So we just assumed anyone's parked in those rows was gonna be counted with the office. And to the same, you know, at the same time, anyone from 400 Westage who was using the parking over here was also counted with the office, because again, it was just any car parked within these spaces was assumed to be for the office. So, you know, I think that kind of adds another layer of, you know, as I was saying before, we know we don't want to be 100% parked at any point. No one's going to be happy with that. The hotel, the office, anyone utilizing those 2 buildings will be happy with that. So we did try to make conservative decisions every step of the way, where, you know, we could have gone with a different approach, but we didn't. But yes, more to discuss.
Given, I just thought of this, yes, sorry. I just thought of this as we were exiting. Maybe it would be appropriate, even at this early stage, to let Labella and CPL talk, especially as they're going through their review, to make sure that, you know, if that would be appropriate at this early stage. I think it might be helpful as to the advice you could get from your consultants, you know, on this issue in particular.
Well, I think we'll wait till the next meeting to do those kind of things, because we haven't even referred this to our consultants yet.
Okay.
But continuing on this talk about shared parking in particular, will there be some kind of legal agreements with, well, certainly with the 300?
Well, it's all part of Westage, so it goes back to the Westage Association and the 5 or 7 amendments. So it's all encompassed. As you know, it's all one big, huge integrated site plan for the whole. So Westage obviously has to sign off, on what we're doing as an association. Bobby has an agreement with the building, owner of 300, who owns 300 as a whole, right? They own all of this. That's how this came about, for the appropriate ground lease agreement in order to do the project. So they're fully aware, invested, and I think they signed the LOA with our application package, if I remember correctly. So this is very out in the open, and Westage is fully aware.
So I guess that's kind of what I was getting at, is that, some documentation of all that legal
I think it's
rigmarole will be-
all in there, but obviously when Dominic has a chance to take a look at it, if he
Yeah.
feels that something is wanting, he'll let us know.
Yes, to be clear, it hasn't been referred to me yet, but.
Understood.
We'll take a look.
Understood.
All right, so we do need to get to a motion on this soon. Any other questions? Any questions from any of our consultants, even though you haven't really had a chance to look at this yet? Anything from the pre-app meeting that you remember or that we talked about, or anything else?
I don't have anything.
Okay. All right. So before we get to a motion, we do want to give the public an opportunity for informal comments, so this would be the time to do that. Is anyone in the audience prepared to make any comments on this particular matter tonight? Just raise your hand if you would like to. All right, there will be opportunities later during the process for public comment. So on that note, would someone like to make a motion to accept the application for the proposed 300 Westage Hotel Site Development Plan and to refer this application to the town engineer, town planning board attorney, Dutchess County Department of Planning and Development, New York State Department of Transportation, and the Rombout Fire District for review and comment? And I think I'd like to make a specific addition to that to seek the input of CPL's traffic engineer on the parking and traffic aspects of this proposal. Would somebody like to move that?
So moved.
Ravi moves it. Is there a second?
Second.
Felix seconds it. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Nay.
Any abstentions? All right, so that carries by a vote of 6-1. And we'll continue discussion with input from our consultants at the January 9th, 2025 meeting. Geez, we're already getting close to that year.
Yes, we are. Thank you.
All right, thanks for coming.
Okay. You're welcome, of course. They have to make it
All right, now we're on to specific project reviews. The first one will be basically a continuation of discussion on the 40 Old Glenham Road 2-lot subdivision, or to review the submission made by the applicant's representative on November 27, 2024. So is the applicant here? Why don't you come on up? So we basically already discussed the revised plans and the updated details from the, so we did get some comments at the public hearing, which we discussed. Mr. Palmer, do you have anything you'd like to add that we didn't talk about previously?
Thank you for the opportunity. No, Mr. Chairman.
All right. So we do have a memo from CPL. And John, would you like to go through that?
Yeah, sure. They addressed basically all of our concerns. The only outstanding items are securing a driveway permit for the new driveway cut and health department approval for the proposed septic and the reserve system for the existing house.
All right.
Jonathan, I got a question.
Yeah, go ahead, Fred.
Are we doing sidewalks? Were
Sorry?
sidewalks part of that?
We can't hear you.
Were sidewalks part of that?
No. I don't think there are any sidewalks out there.
No.
We start somewhere, because that would be from going up that one street At least it would start it going. Because it's not again from Old Lenham Road, because,
There's sidewalks on Old Glen Road.
yeah, but I'm saying, going up that street.
Okay, that's something that the board can discuss. It's not something that we thought would be viable along Tompkins Street.
It's a pretty narrow road as is, and there are no existing sidewalks.
How wide is the road?
I just throw it out, because we're on the comprehensive plan, we put it in.
Yeah,
Topography
I
also
think
doesn't add to it
you also
either.
have to consider whether a two-lot subdivision, which has already an existing house with one new house proposed, will create a need for a sidewalk in that area.
Yeah.
Just a question. All right, any other questions from board members? Dominic, do you have any questions or comments? I think we'll have a couple of ideas of things we can pursue.
Yes. Yeah, nothing in particular at this time.
Okay. So I guess the first thing is the board ready to authorize CPL to prepare a draft EAF Parts 2 and 3, and presumably a draft neg deck for the board's consideration at the January 9th meeting?
Yes, and I'll make that motion.
And I'll second it.
Oh, all right. Hold on 1 second, you're too fast here.
Really, for me too?
All right, Anthony moves it, and Fred seconds it. So further discussion on that motion to have CPL prepare draft EAF Parts 2 and 3 and a draft neg deck. Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? So that carries 7-0. And I guess, well, maybe we could ask Dominic specifically, but would the board be ready to authorize preparation of a draft resolution of preliminary conditional final subdivision approval for the 40 Old Glenham Road 2-lot subdivision for the board's consideration at the January 9th meeting? So any thoughts on that from you, Dominic?
I'm always of the opinion that you can authorize me to prepare it, but it's the board that reviews it and decides, so I'd be happy to prepare it for the January meeting. I don't see any impediment or any reason that would prevent you from doing so at this time.
All right. Any further thoughts from planning board members, or else go right to a motion on that?
No comment. I'll move that.
Question, did you say preliminary or did you say final?
You said both.
You said both.
It would be both preliminary, and since it's a two-lot subdivision, you know, there's not much sense in just granting preliminary because the applicant will likely be able to satisfy all the conditions of approval without needing to come back.
All right, so that would be preliminary and conditional final subdivision approval. So Anthony moved it. Is there a second?
Second.
Felix seconds it. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
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 It's getting a little long.
Any opposed?
Thank you.
Any abstentions? Okay, so that passes 7-0. All right.
Thank you for your time. Happy holidays. We'll see you next year.
Yep, you too. So we should be ready with that for the next meeting. All right. The next project review is Chick-fil-A, 18 Westridge Drive, Site Development Plan. Board to review the application and supporting documentation that was accepted and referred at the November 14th Planning Board meeting. Welcome.
Hello. John Canny here from Whiteman, Osterman, and Hannah. I'm joined by Darrell Marshfield from Cushman Wakefield, a representative of the applicant, Tim Freitag of Bowler Engineering, and also Gordon Stanberry of GTS Consulting. So we're here tonight hoping to get some comments back. We've received some from the county. but we're hoping to get comments back from the building department as to the variances that are going to be necessary for this project. Hoping the board would make a declaration of intent to act as lead agency on seeker and refer this project to the ZBA. So we're here to answer any questions and present you with another overview of the project if that's something the board would like.
Yeah, so we got a nice new set of presentation drawings for this submission, so I think it would be a very good idea if your team can go through
Absolutely.
those and give the board a little better feel for what's proposed out there.
Good evening. Tim Freitag with Bowler Engineering, here on behalf of the applicant Chick-fil-A. Thanks for the introduction, John. I'll go through an overview of the site plan and what the proposed application is. Some of it might be redundant from our first meeting last month, but I understand we really wanted to nail down tonight the site circulation, where the layout is on the site in relation to the existing conditions. So as a reminder, this is part of a pad site out in front of Hudson Valley Town Center, 18 West Edge Drive. It's the former Boston Market facility that on the screen here is located just about here out in front of the Hudson Valley Town Center. Next door is a recently developed Dunkin' Donuts, and we're looking to develop in the northeast corner that is currently developed as a parking lot. On this survey, it's just a zoomed in area of this northeasterly corner of the town center. You can see right here, this is the existing former Boston Market restaurant, currently sitting vacant. There is the access drive to town center right here. And on the eastern side is a 4-row underutilized parking lot. When we were looking at redeveloping this existing 3,000 square foot former restaurant with a new restaurant, we were trying to position the building where the existing building is. The proposed Chick-fil-A restaurant is about 5,200 square feet. That existing restaurant's about 3,000, so it's a little bigger. The existing restaurant doesn't have a drive-through either, so we're also adding a drive-through component to what doesn't exist today. We had a layout that worked here. We were starting to impede a little bit on the Dunkin' Donuts parking lot, and we were really pinching the drive-through around the building, and we were cutting our main parking lot to the building in half by the existing access drive. It really wasn't a great layout, especially for our dine-in guests who might be parking in this parking lot, walking across the access drive and into the building. So we went back to the drawing board. We said, this isn't the ideal layout. Let's do something better. That's how we came up with this proposed site plan. What this does is it actually pushes the existing driveway to West Merritt Boulevard from here, about 100 feet to the west, to here, where the existing Boston Market is. There are a lot of benefits with this adjustment. Not so much for the applicant because it costs a lot more money, but it's really going to create a better project here from site safety and circulation perspective. One of the off-site benefits is actually, you can see nicely in this aerial how traffic starts to back up at the intersection of Route 9 and West Merritt Boulevard at the signalized intersection. When it's red, traffic's going to queue. That queue we observed actually passes beyond the existing driveway today, causing some trouble. Pushing this driveway to the west adds that additional 100 foot of queue length at the signal, so you can still get a flow of vehicles coming into the site and turning left. We're also adding a left turn lane there that's going to help allow those cars that are yielding to turn left, still provide bypass flow on Western Merritt Boulevard. So that, we see that as a significant off-site improvement that we're proposing as part of this project. This driveway would allow access into the town center and connect to the circulation ring road around the town center facility, similar to what it does today. A really inefficient layout with the existing conditions is there's actually this landscaped island in the middle of an access drive here, an access drive here, and you can count how many intersections and turning movements there are right in this narrow area. You've got cars turning here, 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 and here. 4 intersections being replaced by 1. So another significant traffic safety, vehicle circulation improvement as part of this project. And then now we've got this larger area for our use. And again, we're utilizing an area that's currently developed. It's an existing parking lot. In our application with our traffic study, we submitted a parking utilization study. It's a very underutilized area of parking lot that we're able to utilize for our use. So here we've got our 5,200 square foot building. We have an isolated drive-through, and then our parking lot. You know, obviously, we're not allowed any curb cuts to Route 9, so we're not proposing a curb cut to Route 9. We're not proposing any curb cut directly to our site from West Merritt Boulevard. It's all internal access through the town center. What we really like about this layout is it's the isolated drive-through layout rather than your traditional drive-through. A traditional drive-through is the building's in the middle of the site, the drive-through wraps the building, and then the parking lot is around the perimeter of the site. Anybody who parks has to cross the drive-through to get into the building. With an isolated drive-through, you can try to limit that that crossing of your parking dine-in guests and the drive-through activity. So the isolated drive-through, you can come in, approach the drive-through, navigate around the perimeter of the building and out. And then a large area of your parking field for your dining guests, you can park, go in the store, grab your food, dine in if you want, and get back to your vehicle without having to cross that drive-through traffic. The other benefit of an isolated drive-through is your drive-through is now on the perimeter, not your parking, so you can really maximize that drive-through length and your queuing capacity in the drive-through. Chick-fil-A is a little different than your traditional quick-serve restaurant when it comes to the drive-through operations. You'll see these 2 gray areas here and here. These are actually canopies. They're not as tall as like a gas canopy. Gas canopies have like a 13.5-foot minimum clearance to the roof line. These are like 9.5-foot clearance, so they're lower level. You've got like a 10 or 12-inch fascia, and that's it. They're dark bronze color. There's no signage on them other than a clearance height, but there's no signage on them. And the dark bronze matches the trim of the building. And the idea is to hide it. So when you're looking at it, you're really not seeing much. The focus point is still the building. But this provides weather protection at our meal fulfillment area and our order area because, again, differently than your traditional restaurants, Chick-fil-A uses team members or employees to hand meals to your car and also take your orders. So the majority of the time, if you pull up to your menu board, you're actually placing an order to a person. They want to integrate the face-to-face interaction. That team member or employee will have a tablet. They'll be able to help you out with your order, place your order, collect payment, and then you can pull up to the meal area, and then an individual will walk out your meal. This also helps with the 2-lane drive-through that's proposed. So it's 2 lanes all the way through. You'll have 2 order points and 2 meal pickup areas. So the team members are what allow you to have the 2nd lane for meal pickup because you don't have to pull up to the window. You can actually stay in that 2nd lane, and a team member can hand deliver your meals to that 2nd lane. And I'll just pause right there in case there was a question.
I do have a question.
Sure.
I went and visited a Chick-fil-A that was laid out almost exactly like this. Extremely efficient,
Yeah.
really efficient. I noticed when I went through the canopy area, you're right, somebody was out there and then I came around. Does that canopy, I noticed big fans, and
Yep.
I'm assuming that's for summer, but are they also heated?
There are. So there's fans to help just keep air circulation in the summertime for team members, for the employees to help keep airflow. And then next to the fans, there's also heaters that are up higher. It's gas heaters. It's almost like if you've ever been on a patio and somebody's got a little propane heater that you can all stand around. It's similar to that. So team members can stand underneath those heaters to get warm during the winter months.
Okay, yeah, I didn't see the heater, and it wasn't in use at that time.
Yeah.
It was pretty warm a couple of weeks ago, but it was very efficient.
Yeah, thank you. Any questions on the drive-through operation in itself?
Can you just comment how you enter what you have to do if you're coming down Merritt Boulevard?
Yep.
To enter the drive-through?
Sure.
So you gotta come down, you gotta take the left.
Yeah.
You gotta go all the way down, you gotta come back up through the parking lot.
That's right.
Yeah, through the parking lot, yeah.
Okay.
And then this approach here would line up straight into your drive-through entrance.
Okay, and then, so you go through the parking lot.
Navigate
and then
around.
when you come out, you
You-
gotta come
you
back
exit.
through the parking lot, back out. Okay.
That's right.
Because there was a comment in the county response, and I was wondering about that.
Yeah, and to be honest, I was a little confused by the county comments, and maybe they also don't understand the operations of the isolated drive-through layout that we'll respond to. But I was a little confused of their suggestion of having maybe an entrance closer to West Merritt Boulevard, which isn't necessarily ideal for maximizing the queue approach to your drive-through entrance.
Yeah, I think the county characterized it as having to circle around the restaurant twice to get your order, but when you think about it, the whole access is external until you get to that southernmost point, and then you're only going not even fully once around, but like 3/4 of a loop around it.
That's right.
And you said your car queue holds 40-something cars?
That's right. So these are, both these lanes from your pickup window to the drive-through entrance are about 440 feet. On average, you do like an estimated or assumed 20-foot car length, that would be 44 cars in that queue. And then there's an additional third bypass lane from this point here to this point here. So you have 2 lanes with your menu boards. This outer lane will not have a menu board, but it will still have the coverage for the canopy. And this flex lane is part of the operations for a couple reasons, and that was another county suggestion is the third lane necessarily needed given the large queue that we have here. So it is at times a bypass lane, operates just as a bypass lane. If a car in these 2 lanes needs to pull around and get out of the queue, they can. During peak timeframes, or if there's an event going on locally where all of a sudden we see this large demand, they can deploy that third lane to pull cars into the drive-through for additional queue. They don't need a menu board there because a team member can just go out with a tablet and process orders. And then what is also changing is there's a mobile order piece that's becoming very popular. So mobile order is you can go on the app, place your order, drive to the store and pick it up. It's becoming popular ever since COVID. Chipotle is doing, a lot of different restaurants are toying around with it. And that is occupying a lot of parking spaces, they're finding, as that grows. So this third lane, once the mobile orders come to a certain percentage of sales, they can deploy this third lane as a mobile order pickup lane. So now you can have your typical 2-lane drive-through, but then you can direct all your mobile orders through the app, and there'll be a push notification through the app that says enter the third lane that can then service the mobile order pickups and avoid any of that congestion coming in and out of the building and parking and drive-through or vehicle circulation in the parking lot, you can really isolate that into the drive-through now to not impede with your dine-in guests.
So the third lane is only on the north side of the thing, right?
It's only on the north side.
Yeah.
And it's really just to provide that third order point. So basically, you can bypass your menu boards and just get in the queue for your meal pickup.
Quick-
You've already placed your order on
Quick
the
question, when you're talking about that third lane in the space there, I also saw in the county thing, and you can see that they always question about, because the sidewalk ends just as it turns and stops. Now they're asking to see about a sidewalk going along there so you
Yeah.
can walk all the way across and into the, so would that impede in the space of your third lane? Because they also want to see, some vegetation or trees or stuff, like plant boxes, tree boxes they were talking about. So I don't know if that kind of encroaches onto your.
Can you accommodate a sidewalk?
Yeah,
actually,
let's talk about that, because I was interested in that suggestion.
Yeah, so it's tough to see here. This is just an aerial of the Hudson Valley Town Center. So there's sidewalk along Route 9 out front. And what we're proposing to do is connect that sidewalk into our site and our store frontage, so the store has connectivity out to the existing Route 9 sidewalk. And then we're also carrying that through into the town center. So we'll have another pedestrian connectivity, ADA accessible path here. So we're providing that connectivity both from Route 9 to our site and also the town center. The county comment was, okay, to your point, take the sidewalk here and let's extend that down West Miller Boulevard as well.
Turning like you're walking into, you'd be walking into the head-on traffic leaving the plaza.
Right. So if you look at this aerial, there's sidewalk here that continues across the intersection of Route 9. There's sidewalk along the eastern development here.
I saw your cut through like sidewalk going on.
Yeah. And then there's integration here. So when this, I think it's Dunkin' Donuts, yeah. When Dunkin' Donuts was developed here, they didn't extend sidewalk along that frontage there. So we would essentially be extending that pedestrian connectivity to this driveway, and it would leave a gap. This driveway is also heavily utilized by the vehicle traffic that's coming into the site, and it's a busy intersection. We don't feel that this is the best place for that sidewalk connectivity. We feel the sidewalk connectivity through the town center and out is more appropriate, as we have shown, but it's certainly an item for discussion here, and the county brought it up, so we can certainly talk about it. But to your exact question is it going to affect the drive-through? I imagine we could still put a sidewalk connection through here and not impede the drive-through.
I think, I'm not trying to say that that's what they're thinking, but, going back, there's hotels, medical offices, stuff, and I don't know if you've ever seen it, but people come out of those hotels and crosswalk across the Merrick Boulevard there, because it's like they want to go to Walmart.
Right.
And they want to come up, and now they're thinking, they want to walk up to Dunkin' Donuts that's there, and they can walk further up to your restaurant. So I'm just wondering if they're trying to see about that the sidewalk will continue all the way back towards the hotel.
Yeah, and I don't know if there's any information that we can look into further of, I'm sure it was discussed during the Dunkin' Donuts of what the idea was and why they connected on the southern side before they connected to Walmart there. But our goal was to provide that integration. If there's another thought to do so, we can certainly talk about it. What I would be mindful of is we don't want pedestrians crossing this drive-through anywhere. So if there is a pedestrian connectivity along West Merritt Boulevard or even into the town center here, we need to provide some type of fencing or buffer from the sidewalk to the drive-through, because you don't want just a random opening of pedestrian traffic coming through this drive-through. So we want to really isolate that to the frontage and not through the vehicle queue.
The county also made a comment regarding that, the proposed crosswalks to connect the sidewalk on Route 9 to the building that you were talking about coming through the parking lot. And the county is suggesting that that striped parking area could be curbed to make it a little bit more distinguishable. And that's, I think, a good suggestion to look into.
Yeah, right here, there's the end of the parking stall island. That's just striping right now. It's pavement with striping over top of it. That's needed just for the truck turn movement. The delivery truck will still come in here and turn around. We could certainly do some type of mountable curb situation that makes it a little textured or a little different than the pavement to help for a pedestrian safety standpoint.
Yeah,
so
I
we
think,
can certainly look into that.
I think that would be the idea, yeah.
So where does the truck drop off their food?
So,
Excuse me, where does the truck drop off their food?
For
In the front part or the back part?
For deliveries?
Yes.
Yeah, so they would stage kind of out in front of the building here, and then hand cart the deliveries to this back door. Yeah. So deliveries are when the store is closed. So this store operates Monday through Saturday, 6:30 a.m. to 10 p.m. Then they do night deliveries in the middle of the night when the store is closed, so you don't have the conflicts with the truck and parking spots. And then it's important to note that they're closed on Sundays. So Chick-fil-A is closed on Sundays.
Except on the thruway from now on.
No, they're still closed on Sundays.
Sundays they
That's not changing. So just to wrap up my site plan presentation, you know, we touched a lot on the drive-through. There is this parking lot out front. So overall, what we did is we assessed the impact of this development from a shopping center parking standpoint. So within the limit of disturbance, in existing conditions, there was 104 parking spaces. As a result of this project, we're at 102 parking spaces within the limit of disturbance. So we are requesting a waiver from this board for the reduction of 2 parking stalls. Out in front of the Chick-fil-A store, there's 88 here that are mostly the day-to-day parking stalls that Chick-fil-A will be utilizing. And then we're adding the additional parking row here to offset some impacts from redevelop or shifting this roadway that the rest of the town center or Dunkin' Donuts could utilize for shared parking. In our application, we submitted more details on a parking assessment for the whole center, along with a traffic study that assessed this access drive and traffic signal in more detail. As part of our application, we have identified 5 potential area variances that may be needed as part of this development. That was in Whiteman, Osterman, and Hannah's cover letter on our initial application. A quick summary on those. We made the assumption, and we need a formal determination from the town on West Merritt Boulevard being a front yard or considered a front yard. So we've got a 100-foot setback to front yards in this planned shopping center zoning district. So the property line here is actually way up here. And West Merritt Boulevard is a private roadway. This canopy is within that 100-foot setback. We're approximately 66 feet, so we're requesting an area variance for the reduction of 100 foot to 66 feet here. Again, it's not an enclosed structure, it's just the canopy that you can see through. And then there's also an additional 125-foot front yard setback to the center line of a road. And this one's unique because usually your property line is before the road, but in this sense, the center line of the road is actually closer to our site than the property line is. So that distance to the canopy is around 51 feet. So that's the requested or noted area variance 1 and 2. There's also a provision in the code that says access to a drive-through is not permitted within the front yard setback. In this case, here's our drive-through entrance. It's within 100 feet of the front yard to Route 9. Again, why this is unique, we don't have our front yard access to Route 9, right? Our access is internal with the shopping center, which really drives the way our site circulation and layout is. So usually when we see a provision like that, you don't want your drive-through entrance close to your driveway in your front yard, right? You want to get the cars into your site and then start the drive-through queue in the back. So we believe we're meeting the intent of the code. It's just a little unique here since our access is to the south and not Route 9. We identified that we are increasing lot coverage by 2% within the limits of the disturbance. We're adding a little bit more pavement area, that means, to add the drive-through use. So we are reducing parking from 104 spots to 102 spots. The building went up 2,000 square feet than existing conditions, and we're adding the drive-through component. So in turn, we're adding a little bit more pervious area. We are proposing to offset that with an extensive landscape plan. We've got a healthy amount of trees and vegetation proposed. 28 trees, over 400 shrubs and ground covers. They really have a hefty budget. Chick-fil-A likes the way that their building looks inside and out, but also how their site looks. So there is a hefty landscape plan that's proposed and included in our package. And then our fifth variance is just related to signage, of which the county commented on as well. To date, we received the county comments and also the town engineering comments. We thought all the town engineering comments were fair. We can address those and respond accordingly. Take no issue there. Just reading through the rest of the county comments, we talked about the site circulation. You don't have to circulate the building twice. That was comment number 1. Comment number 2 was in regards to the third lane that we spoke about. Comment number 3 was about the sidewalk along West Merritt Boulevard. 4, the curbed island that we spoke about. 5 is they're suggesting this board look at potentially reducing the amount of parking or land banking some parking. Again, we've got the reduction of 2 spaces, but we're actually increasing the intensity of the parking use and demand by the larger restaurant. And this restaurant, at peak times, you may have about 25 team members on staff. So team members, they take up a lot of parking spots. So that's why the lot is a little larger than what's required by code. 52 spots are required by code. We're proposing about 88 in that front area. But again, 25 team members on duty. And then you have a shift change where you might have some turnover with parking spots across the country at other Chick-fil-A's. In the 80s is really what they shoot for amount of parking spots. Number 6 is the suggestion of adding some bike parking, so we can certainly add that. That's a great idea. They asked what this curb ramp was for in the southwest corner of the building. So this is where team members will take the trash corral or the trash cart out into our trash corral and enclosure here. So that's just the path that team members will take the trash throughout the day to the trash enclosure. There were some suggestions on lighting. The first was identifying that it's relatively bright under these canopies. So the lighting intensity under these canopies is greater than our parking lot. And it's because we have people out there. There are team members and vehicles. It needs to be bright enough area for safety. So it's consistent with what you see at gas stations. And that's all we would ask for, is to be consistent with what you see at gas stations across the area, just because you have that interaction of people with vehicles. The rest of the site is well under that 5-foot candle threshold that they reference. On average, it's about 3.8-foot candles. So we feel like we've got a good spread of light across the rest of the parking lot. We can certainly provide the lighting spec that they requested. They suggested a 2700K light color. We're proposing a 3000K light color. That's still the softer tone. It's not the daylight tone. So we would request to stay with that 3000 color tone. And then 4 was confirm that the floodlight for the flagpole will not cause light pollution. So there's a flagpole that they'll have, and there's just a floodlight that's proposed to shine up on the flag. We can do a little more research to see if that meets code or not in this district.
They mentioned bug rating of, or trying to achieve a bug rating of 000. Are you evaluating that?
I'll have to reach out to the lighting professionals on that. That's a little more than my knowledge as it comes to lighting. So we plan to formally respond to all these comments.
Okay.
And we can certainly talk more in detail at the next meeting if needed. And then the last topic that they discussed was signage. 5 wall signs are proposed as shown on the submitted building elevations. And wall signage on all four sides is really needed here. We've got access to our site, from the side and the rear, and then frontage of the buildings. So we are requesting additional wall signage than the allowable 2 wall signs. And then we'll also look into whether those can be externally lit as recommended by the county versus backlit. And again, we would just look to be consistent with the surrounding area in that regard. And then the engineering comments, like I said, we don't take any issue, but certainly defer to the town engineer or the board if they'd like to discuss any of those further. So that was a little winded. I'm done talking.
Yeah.
I'll certainly turn it back over to the board for any questions or comments.
No, that was very helpful, and actually, I'm very appreciative that you provided these presentation plans, because they're really a lot easier to, not only for the board, but I think for the public to see what's going on with the site.
Yeah.
And so meanwhile, why don't we go right to CPL's memo, and just, John, if you could go through that quickly.
Sure. As far as seeker goes, assuming Dominic agrees, we believe this could be classified as an unlisted action.
I agree.
So that's something that the board could consider doing this evening. Our comments are, there are a number of them, but many of them are more housekeeping items, asking for additional details on certain things. I will say they did a really good job on their SWIP. We only had a couple minor comments on that. Unfortunately, our traffic engineer was not able to complete a review of this application in time for this meeting, so that is something that will be coming with the next review. Unfortunately, we just couldn't get it in for tonight.
Great. In regards to traffic, we have been coordinating with New York State DOT for their review of the traffic impact study as well.
And also, I'll just note that we did receive a letter from Cassandra Bibbo, permit engineer. It's a letter dated November 19th, so that was a little ways back, but basically indicating that due to the traffic impact assessment and proximity to Route 9, DOT will be requesting the applicant to make necessary improvements to the intersection of Route 9 and Merritt Boulevard. This may include, but is not limited to, upgrading the signal intersection with cameras and potential adaptive signal equipment, and upgrading any pedestrian crossings. So I guess those are things that they'll be looking at further. Do you have any quick reactions to that?
We do, and actually I'll ask Gordon maybe to come up quickly. We did have a follow-up conversation with DOT to get a little bit more definitive of what that meant. It was very open-ended. They weren't really precise in what they were requesting. So maybe Gordon, if you could just give a brief overview of what we found out since then.
Okay.
Good evening. Gordon Stansberry, GTS Consulting, Chittenango, New York. So I had a discussion with DOT just a couple days ago. Just as a kind of a little piece of back information, the overall result of the traffic impact study found that there was very limited impacts at the intersection of Route 9 and West Merritt Boulevard. All levels of service are maintained from the background condition. All volume to capacity ratios are still 0.9 or below. There are some levels of service, E and F, but they're functions of the long coordinated signal operation, not a capacity concern. And in my conversation with DOT, they agreed there really isn't much of an impact. But what New York State DOT has been doing is along the Route 9 corridor, they've been working with developers that are coming in with developments in close proximity to signals to upgrade signals to get to adaptive signal control and improve the operation of the intersection, even though there may not be a direct impact from the project. So what they're looking at, and they weren't totally clear on exactly what they need at this point. They're still talking with their signal group, but it's upgrading the signal controller module to include the adaptive program. So it would be a purchase of that program. It would be an upgrade of the signal detection, where today they have loop detection. They would need camera detection on the signal, so it'd be adding cameras for the operation. And then it may or may not involve replacing the coordination or the actual controller box, because the control box may not be large enough to handle the additional equipment. So it's not any, there's no modification to the signal itself. There's no modification to the footprint of the intersection. It's really just signal control components that may need to be upgraded. So they're working with their signal group. I think they were meeting tomorrow and hoping to get more direction to us on exactly what they're looking for. But we are fully supportive of working with them to address what they're looking for. As far as the pedestrian improvements, I asked them about that because obviously we have crosswalks and signal and pedestrian heads already. I would expect that it may be some upgrades to either the push buttons or the countdown timers or that type of thing, but they're going to get that to us as well. But the project team is willing to work with DOT to address what they're looking for.
All right, thanks for that. Yeah, thanks for the further explanation. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, so we're in process of trying to get through that with them.
Any other questions? We've had a pretty good discussion on this, but any other questions from board members?
I'm just curious, because I've not been to one of your places. Sorry.
Thank you for
I've not been to one of your facilities yet. By the time they take the order, that's a long drive-through. How back up does it get? Because you're saying you could put 40 cars in there, in the queue?
Yeah, you could fit approximately 44 cars in that queue.
I would like to be on the 44th car.
It would take a little bit longer, but Chick-fil-A has some raving fans who's willing to sit in the drive-thru for 20, 30 minutes at times.
Do they give them a snack at the beginning? So by the time they get...
They don't. They don't. No extra waffle fries, but the stacks and queuing of a Chick-fil-A are greater than what you see at the industry standard of a quick-serve restaurant. And that's reflective in our traffic study. So Gordon, myself, and the team, we partnered with Chick-fil-A as they roll out a new territory. So upstate New York, we've been rolling out Chick-fil-A stores since 2016. I've been working on some of the first ones in Cicero and Plattsburgh and now in the Hudson Valley. After stores built, we're collecting data. We have a lot of data at all these other facilities that we use to create our own ITE trip generation, our own queuing capacity, because it's much different than what the industry standard has on quick serve restaurants. It's something DOT has gotten smarter about and requested. It's something towns have also seen, acknowledged, and requested. So we already did that exercise as part of our traffic study that was submitted. But that's why you see a longer drive-through here than you would typically see at another quick serve restaurant, but we're planning for the expectation. Yeah.
Just one little thing to also think about, because I've heard this at a number of meetings. When you think about 44 cars stacked, you're thinking about 44 cars in one line. This is really two stacks of 20.
I understand that.
So a typical drive-through may have a stack of 10 to 12, 13 cars. So this really isn't that much longer. It's just that it's doubled. So just something to think about.
Is there data on like the peak use of those drive-throughs? Like how often does that major stack up happen?
So we've collected site-specific data at 6 sites around upstate New York, and that's what we based our trip generation on, as well as the queuing information.
But we're not upstate.
Yeah, we can leave that from the microphone now. Thank you.
Just open in Yonkers. You guys are upstate. According to New York City, everything above this, but I would agree this is more downstate to me. So we've looked at a lot of specific drive-throughs, and the data we've seen, obviously the peak times are the midday lunch and the Saturday midday. So those are really the two primary times. And we've seen queues in the neighborhood of 15 to 17 cars per lane, So we generally, we've seen 20, I think, at a couple, but it's not consistent all day. It's really during those lunch rushes, and this provides a little bit of safety relief without backing out into the parking lot.
Thanks.
Is that also too why you were talking before about the app? Because I know my daughter has done it, where you pre-order and you come in, and that way you can, your stuff is kind of ready when you get there, and you're kind of not, you know, because sometimes when people are, a lot of the people in that line sometimes are, oh, Chick-fil-A, and turn in and stuff like that. And then you can go inside too and pick up food, right?
That's right, and they, Chick-fil-A actually trains their team at approximately that 40-car queue. It's quicker to go on the app, so they'll actually start telling folks to order on the app as they see that, to help with the queue and utilize a channel that's being underutilized. So there's multiple channels, right? There's the drive-through, there's the app, there's dine-in. So as one channel gets really heavy, they've already got team members out there to talk to folks to tell them, hey, go inside. It's going to be faster than sitting at
Yeah, she just
car
picked it up
number
tonight.
42.
She just did it tonight.
Nice. Yeah. But to that point, and that you consider this upstate or not, depends where you are. This is the first application in Dutchess County, I believe. So that letter, you know, they're new, looking at this for the first time too. I'd love to have a conversation with them to explain kind of the operations, the drive-through, the queuing, the circulation, similar to it that I did with this board, just to educate. And we do have another application that's in front of the town of Poughkeepsie too. So those are kind of the first two to market in the Dutchess County region that's proposed.
They're upstate.
Okay, so thank you for all that. Any other questions? I think we've had a pretty good discussion on this one tonight.
Good for tonight.
Can I just make one little?
Certainly.
It's only about the comprehensive plan. A lot of the survey questionnaire responses had to do with pedestrians along Route 9. So that's just something the board can think about. If there's a way, I know that's maybe not a great place for a pedestrian crossing, but that concern was expressed. So if there's a way to accommodate pedestrians at some point along that stretch of Route 9, it just would make sense for the board and applicants to start thinking about what would be the best place. That's it.
Yeah, if I could throw my suggestion, would be at a signalized intersection is where you want pedestrians crossing, not necessarily at a one-way stop condition.
No, it was about the public concern was about trying to get across Route 9 from one side to the other. Not related to any business, just some of them actually do walk along Route 9, and
Gotcha.
that was it was a general comment, nothing to do with the project specifically.
Sure.
But it raises it because here we are looking at, you know, an intersection where people are mostly coming and going in cars, but there are people that walk, so. That's it.
And I guess there is no formalized crosswalk at that intersection.
No.
Something for our further discussions with DOT to have discussions with them about.
Yeah, Bob's just mentioning there's a crosswalk further down.
Further down.
So if there's like an increase in traffic in the area, it's just something to think about. If there's already a crosswalk further down 9 where people are crossing, if it needs any improvements because of increases in traffic. That's it.
Right. Good. So, according to CPL's review memorandum, this does appear to be an unlisted action under seeker. Dominic, do you concur with that?
I did, yes.
Right. So, if that's the case, can we also have the board declare intent to be lead agency to conduct a coordinated review?
Yes, that would be our recommendation.
All right, so we'll try to do that all in one motion. So,
I'm sorry, I need to hear this. It's okay.
so can we have a motion to classify the proposed Chick-fil-A restaurant at 18 Westridge Drive as an unlisted action pursuant to the seeker regulations and to circulate a notice of intent to involved and interested agencies for the planning board to serve as lead agency to conduct a coordinated environmental review.
So moved.
Second.
Felix moves it and Fred seconds it. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, that's good to go. All right. Any other questions you had for us tonight?
Just for my education, does this board formally refer applications to the ZBA? And if so, when would that carry out through this process?
There is our ZBA secretary.
ZBA, no, this board does not
Perfect.
refer to the ZBA.
So we could go ahead and just make a formal
You
application?
can, but I would suggest you get the answers from Mr. Peters first before you do.
Yep.
Because
Okay.
he's going to have to send you to the ZBA.
Okay.
Okay?
And then that process can be concurrent with the continued review of this board?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the types of variances. Many of them may be type 2 actions, but some of them might be unlisted, and if that's the case, then we should include the ZBA as on the list of lead agency intent and coordinate with the ZBA on those variances.
I agree.
And then this board would have to act on secret before those variances could be granted?
Yeah.
That's correct.
So we will have to continue with this board as we navigate the
Yeah.
ZBA process?
In all likelihood, it would happen on parallel tracks.
Sure.
So, if that's the way that you wish to proceed, where you make an application to the ZBA while you're also before this board for consideration of site plan approval.
Great. That helps. Thank you. Appreciate your time. That was a little long-winded, but great progress.
This was very helpful. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. The next project review is Homeland Towers Communications Tower, 73 US Route 9, Site Development Plan and Special Use Permit. Board to review a draft resolution of conditional final approval, Site Development Plan and Special Use Permit, and to consider adopting and authorizing the Planning Board Chair to sign it. So Dominic, why don't you take us through the draft resolution that you prepared, summarizing, of course, the parts that need summarizing.
Yes. No, thank you for that. I'm just pulling it up as we speak, so my apologies. So this is a resolution of conditional final approval. As the board recalled at 2 meetings ago, you adopted a resolution of preliminary approval for the project, which allowed the applicant to then finalize their process before the Zoning Board of Appeals. They've done so, and the Zoning Board has granted variances that were required for the project. And so now the applicant is back before you requesting conditional final approval. I understand, although I was not here last month, that there was significant discussion regarding finalizing details on plans as well, and those are reflected in this draft. The draft is very similar, if you will, to the preliminary approval, because that draft captured the history and considerations that the board made at that time in granting preliminary approval. So in the interest of brevity, I will not go through all of those. The conditions for the board to consider, which the applicant will have to meet prior to finalizing and getting a signed site plan, include the following. And the one other thing that I should mention is that at the October meeting, when you granted preliminary site development plan approval, you held off on special use permit approval. There are a couple reasons for that, and the most technical and legal one is the fact that the code does not provide for a preliminary special permit approval process. So, and also the project at that point did not meet the zoning requirements because it required the ZBA approval. But this resolution is not only for conditional final site plan approval, but it is also for a special use permit approval as well, and makes the required findings that are associated with special use permit approval as outlined in the code, as well as the requirements that the sections regarding telecommunication towers are met. With that said, the outstanding engineering comments, the last memo from CPL was dated October 2nd, 2024. The applicant will have to demonstrate that they've addressed all of those comments. The applicant will have to get any outside agency approvals required for the project. In this case, it was predominantly the Zoning Board of Appeals, which they essentially have already met. There is a performance bond required in connection with the installation, satisfactory installation of site improvements. There is a decommissioning bond that is also required. An inspection fee must be paid as well. At last month's meeting, and has been previously discussed even before that, the applicant has offered to donate $10,000 to the town for the planting of additional trees, not only within the Route 9 corridor, but as other areas that the town may wish to see additional plantings. This is what I'm referring to as a tree planting fund. This board doesn't have the ability or jurisdiction to oversee the receipt of that kind of payment or, designation as to how that would be addressed. And so the applicant has agreed, and the way that this is written is that it's a condition of the approval for the applicant to work with the town board to make that donation so that the town board can then, through appropriate town officers, oversee how those funds are spent, acknowledging the fact that they're to be spent for tree planting as they see fit. There are standard notes regarding final plan revisions and requirements for related to the planning board's chair's signature. And is of course a requirement that all fees are paid and escrow deposits made as required. And those are the conditions that have to be met prior to site development plan approval as far as the authorizing the chairman's signature. What we've then done is lump in all the other, well, lump in is maybe the wrong way to phrase it, but then, we go on to all of the other conditions that are ongoing conditions as far as the approval is concerned. The landscaping and screening and the lighting and architectural design and details have to be as constructed on the site as shown on the plans. In connection with, like, for instance, the plantings have to consist of 80% native species to the northeastern United States. Other technical requirements regarding the landscaping. Also, the exterior lighting has to meet the requirements of the code. And all of the landscaping and screening that's shown on the site development plan have to be installed prior to the issuance of certificate of occupancy. So before they can begin operating the facility, they have to show that they've installed all of the landscaping and screening. The architectural building design details, as shown on the plans, as well, in particular, the colors that were discussed at the November meeting have to be the ones that are actually used during the construction of the project. And we've also added additional clause that's standard now that any changes or modifications that the applicant might deem to be necessary during the course of construction actually have to return to the planning board so that the planning board can consider those prior to the finalization of construction. And the applicant has an ongoing responsibility for maintaining the entire site in an appropriate manner to prevent the unsightly accumulation of trash, debris, and other discarded items. The applicant will have to comply with the terms of the Zoning Board of Appeals variance decision that was granted on October 15th. There's also a limitation on use, that this approval is only for this particular use as proposed and no other use, including additional co-locations or replacement of antenna without coming back to this board for any amended approval. There's a limitation on amenities, accessory structures, and outdoor fixtures, so only shown what is on the plan can actually be constructed. There was already a negative declaration adopted by the board in September, and the mitigation measures identified in that negative declaration, and I apologize, I include a extra word here in section 20 of amended negative declaration, and we did not have an amended one, so I apologize for that if you would delete that from your reference. And this resolution finally will be binding not only on the applicant, but any successors in interest. So if the ownership of this facility changes hands, a new owner would have to have these same responsibilities that the current owner has. And that's it.
If I may, we just only had a couple quick questions. One, the version of the resolution I received had a blank for the inspection fee. We were going to suggest that the inspection fee be 7% of the amount approved for the performance bond. That seemed how it was written in the code, that those were related, is the non-building construction.
Yeah, that's typically how we calculate it. However, we have not received the performance bond estimate yet.
That is correct. We're calculating that, but just so that we have something in there that instead of the blank, so that the board can take action on tonight.
It's not our custom and practice. I pass a resolution without that in there.
Yeah, I mean,
I'll leave that up to you.
we normally will get the estimate of cost of site improvement so that we can not only get that blank filled in on inspection fee amounts, but also for the planning board, before this goes to the town board, to have a pretty good idea of what the magnitude of the performance bond is going to be. The decommissioning bond is a totally separate matter, but so that's going to be up to the planning board.
Understood. The only reason we made the request is for this particular project, they're so limited in the off-site or the non-building construction. It really would be limited to the grading. There's no landscaping proposed, so for this, we thought that the number we're already having to submit for the performance bond, and the way that Condition 3 was written, that we would submit the amount to the planning board's engineer to be then approved by the town board. Since the code really kind of says the inspection fee is the same kind of cost for the performance bond, and then it's 7% of that, we thought saying that we could agree to the 7% of the amount that is approved by the performance bond, that would be in there. That's our suggestion.
Well, Debbie's looking at me. I'm going to look to the whole
I've never done
board.
it in 27 years, that's why I'm looking at you.
Yeah. we
Usually I
don't-
have to collect that amount, and that's in the resolution before it's adopted, so it's not my call.
Yeah.
I just hate leaving things open, that's all.
That would be up to the planning board. I have no recommendation myself, really. It's, as Debbie says, it's something that we don't normally do, so,
Usually there's an amount in there.
yep. So what does the board think? Give us that wording you were suggesting again, 77%?
7%. So the way the code is written is it mirrors the section for the performance bond, saying it shall not exceed 7% of the cost of the non-building construction. And so we were saying the amount in this blank should be the amount of 7% of the cost approved for the performance bond.
What says the planning board?
It's typically much less than 7.
What do you think, Ron?
I'm just, I was just talking to Debbie. I mean, in this particular case, because there is very little for them to base a performance bond amount on, I think 7% would be appropriate. Typically, with a larger site development plan, we get the performance bond estimate and then come up with an inspection fee that is usually much less than 7%. because that performance bond amount is so high. In this case, it would probably make sense to set it at 7%.
I just need to ask a question. How will I get that amount? Will I get that from you?
Yeah, once I receive the estimate, then I would then,
I'm not trying to be, this
Yeah.
has never been done before, so I just want to get the wording right.
Right.
Because I have to collect the payment ultimately, so.
The reason we thought of it was because the way that condition 3 is written, we would have to submit the cost to the board's engineer for approval of the performance bond.
Right.
Since it's the same exact cost that would be used to use the 7% for the inspection fee, we just felt that submission process would work for the inspection fee as well.
And this would be just added to the long list of things that the applicant would have to provide before the site plan is signed by the
Correct.
planning board chair.
That's correct.
Which is one more thing to follow up on. So it's up to the board.
It's up to the board, of course.
We've had
Yeah, I'm okay with
we
it.
have a suggestion from our engineer
Yeah.
to.
Yeah, right now it's
use that
blank,
wording.
so we have to follow up on it anyway.
Well,
So far I'm hearing a couple of agreements with completing the resolution
Yeah.
on that
Yeah.
basis.
I would agree with the recommendation provided.
Is anybody opposed to that approach?
I hate
You-
to see this sit for another month. You know, I think we've done the hard work, right? It's like, it's a little yellow spot there.
So we can either fill in that yellow spot now with that suggested wording, or we can come back in January to fill it in. I think we have a sense, I'm not weighing in one way or the other, but so far from what I've heard from other members.
Well, it can't be more than 7% anyway, so. right, according
What
to-
will be the exact wording? So,
Do you have that again?
Someone?
7% of the amount, or of the cost that is to be approved for the performance bond.
Do you have that, Debbie? in
Yes.
case-
Yeah.
So, how about this end of the table? Any objections to that? Filling in the blank with those words? Okay.
And then I just had two more quick comments. We have no problem with keeping in conditions 11 and 13. We just wanted to make it explicitly clear to the board that there is no landscaping proposed as part of our project.
Right.
So I just wanted to make sure that that was aware. The screening, we interpreted that to be the fence, so I think it's appropriate to leave the conditions in. But just with the specifics on the 80% native species, I didn't want there to be any confusion. I wanted to make sure it was explicitly known. There's no landscaping proposed.
Can it be a native fence?
We'll try for that.
Yeah, these are standard conditions that are included.
Totally understood,
you
which
know.
is why I feel they're fine for keeping in. I just didn't want to make it a confusion that we were agreeing to something like that.
Okay.
It is as shown on the plans.
Perfect.
All right, so do we have a motion to approve and adopt the resolution of conditional final approval for the Homeland Towers Communications Tower, 73 US Route 9, site development plan and special use permit as reviewed and revised tonight, and to authorize the chair to sign it?
So moved.
Second.
Fred moves it, Felix seconds it. Any further discussion?
No.
No.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? That passes 7-0.
Thank you very much.
So one thing I'll add, as well as thanking you for all of your hard work on this application, is that I received a copy of an email from our highway superintendent saying that he's very happy to hear about the possible donation regarding to the town regarding the tree planting. So he's very happy and willing to work with all of us on figuring out a way to make that tree planting fund work for the town.
That's great to hear, and when we coordinate with the town attorney and the town board, I'll see if we can also coordinate with the highway supervisor, so we can get momentum for the town board to accept our donation.
Yeah, and in that email, this is Carmine Estevan, the highway superintendent, is repeating the fact that the town is currently pursuing designation as a Tree City USA, and to do that, this tree planting fund will help quite a bit in terms of moving the town toward that designation.
That's great, and we're happy to help. And I appreciate everyone during this time. And as some of you may know, I became a father during this process, so we started with, my son was born, and then now he's got 3 teeth and crawling, and so this has been a very fulfilling project for me, so I appreciate all of your time.
Thank you very much.
Thanks so much.
Happy holidays to your family.
Happy holidays to everybody, and Happy New Year.
Take care, girl.
All right. So the next application that is up for review is Duchess Manor Restoration and Site Redesign, Site Development Plan and Special Use Permit. Board to review the submission made by the applicant's representative on November 27th, 2024, which is a traffic impact study dated November 25th, 2024. So I'm just going to mention that although the work on the Hudson Highlands Fjord Trail Visitation Data Committee that I served on is completed, I've decided to continue to recuse myself from discussions of this application just to avoid any potential or perceived conflict of interest. So I discussed this with Vice Chair Anthony Brozier, and he was okay with that. So Anthony has been happy to fill in as chair for this matter tonight and at future meetings. So with that, I will take my phone with me and maybe watch some of the football game that's probably still on.
Let me know how it's going. There's a TV right in here, John. I'll let you in.
Oh, yeah? Oh, is that what they're doing in there?
That's what they're doing.
Before we get going, I do want to, in light of John recusing himself, I want to activate VJ Colombi as a voting member for this particular item tonight, so we would have a full voting board of 7. Again, this is we're going to discuss the submission received by the planning board on November 27th, which is the traffic impact study, and we'll discuss the review of that. Good evening.
Good evening.
So before we get into what's been submitted, do you have any updates for the board? What's been going on since the last submittal?
No, I think maybe the most relevant one is we had a big neighborhood meeting with the Dutchess Junction neighborhood writ large, so it was about 53 people in attendance and a lot of great discussion. So we're going to follow up again in the new year with that group, just to keep the conversation going.
Okay. Excellent, thank you. I was going to ask if there had been any public discussion, so that is good to know. So this item was not on the November agenda, so I do want to recap where we left off. The seeker notice of intent to become lead agency for this application was circulated at the October meeting. So more than 30 days have passed at this point, so my understanding, Dominic, correct me if I'm wrong, would be that this board would tonight need to consider a motion to be lead agency in light of the circulation period that has passed?
Yes, I think at this point, the way that seeker works is that you've declared your intent to be lead agency, you sent out a notice. It provides a maximum period of 30 days for other agencies to contest. All other agencies that are involved with aspects of this project were included on that circulation notice, and no agency objected. In fact, agencies in particular consented to this board being lead agency as it relates to the proposed development affecting Duchess Manor, and for this aspect of this overall project. But this
and I think that's a good point to make, because I did want to make reference to there were 3 agencies that had formally responded, so I do want to make mention of those. On October 31st, the planning board received email from Parks,
Nancy Stoner from the Parks Department, and the message stated that OPRHP has no objection to the town of Fishkill serving as seeker lead agency for this action. We also received on October 30th from David Groucher of DOT, stating that the DOT consents to the town of Fishkill Planning Board assuming the role of lead agency for review of the reference proposal. And then we also received on November 6th a letter from William Geisler from Dutchess County Department of Behavioral and Community Health, and also indicating that the department had no objection to the Fishkill Planning Board serving as lead agency, although they did remind the applicant that detailed plans and specs would need to be submitted to the department for water supply and sewage disposal, which would be addressed down the road.
Yes.
So I also want to make mention of an email that the planning board received. I received it earlier today from Susan Peel from Cold Spring, and the letter did reference concerns once again about the potential of segmentation and how it's defined in the seeker handbook. And so I guess, Dominic, at this point, I know you've again touched on this at previous meetings, but I would like you to just address that, because this board tonight will need to consider lead agency, whether that's something this board wants to accept. So it is a concern that has come up repeatedly, and in light of the public interest in this project, I'd like you to just, again, briefly explain that and your thoughts on that as it relates to this project.
Well, just taking a step back for a moment and just to revisit, the earlier part of this discussion, is that, as I said, the board declared your intent to be lead agency. Other agencies have 30 days to object to that, and obviously that did not happen, as you pointed out. But in addition to that, like, what you're doing essentially tonight is you're acknowledging the fact that you have become lead agency. And it's this board's practice to adopt a motion to acknowledge the fact that but you've already declared your intent, and what you're doing now is you're essentially, or what you're considering to doing now is acknowledging the fact that you are, in fact, lead agency. It's this board's practice to make that motion to do that. Other boards don't necessarily do that. There's nothing that's in seeker regulations that say you have to adopt a motion, because it's kind of, for lack of a better way of saying it, it's kind of automatic. After the 30 days has passed, it's like whammo, you become lead agency as it relates to the Dutchess Manor project. But that said, I appreciate and acknowledge that it has been brought up to the board and continues to be, including with correspondence today, relating to concerns regarding segmentation. And this is the kind of thing that I could talk about, for a length of, and have, but in all fairness to everyone, I think it really boils down to an essential issue. And the reason why, in general, segmentation is to be typically avoided, not necessarily in all cases, but typically avoided, is because it can lead to some lesser or lower quality of environmental review. And what I mean by that is, and I'll take an example. So let's say you have a large piece of property that is being proposed for only a small portion of development, say residential homes. And so you have a larger piece of property, and an applicant comes in and says, I want to build 5 homes right now, and I don't want to build anything else, and I'm not prepared to show you what's happening, in the back of the project, or back of the land, where it's pretty clear, that it's being designed, for potential future development. And by looking at only, say, like those first 5 homes, when maybe 40 or 50 homes could be built behind it, is kind of the classic case of segmentation. Because what it's designed to do is say, just look at this right now, impact from 5 homes, what's 5 homes, 5 septic systems, 5 wells, 5 homes worth of cars on local roads. All of those things are the intent is to minimize that so that, you avoid essentially doing an environmental impact statement. In the context of this is a bit different because, the Hudson Highlands Fjord Trail is actually currently undergoing, an environmental impact statement, which was just accepted by New York State and is currently under review and available for public comment. So it's not as though like there has been an avoidance of doing an environmental impact statement here. One actually is being done. It's a bit unusual that it's concurrent with a review of this, but that said, the lead agency for that review at the New York State Office of Parks, Recreation, Historic Preservation has specifically consented to this board and has made it very clear that they are deferring to you as to the environmental review associated specifically with the site plan elements for the Duchess Manor project. And so they have said that this is okay by them, that they do not consider this to be segmentation. I understand that people have different opinions, and of course they're going to make their comments. They can also comment. They can comment to this board as they already have. They can also comment to OPRHP, the Office of Parks, Recreation, and Historic Preservation regarding that issue. That will have to be addressed. It'll have to be addressed by this board, in the context of any additional comments that come in. It'll have to be addressed as part of any final environmental impact statement that gets presented to the Office of Parks. And that's how it's going to play out. But I would tell you my professional opinion is that by taking lead agency for Duchess Manor, like you're not sidestepping the required review that's associated with this other project that is also pending and going through the most the highest level of environmental review, which is the preparation of an environmental impact statement. They're doing it. So segmentation, put short, I said I could talk and I could go on, but where segmentation is really meant to be avoided is in situations where you're breaking up a project in order to avoid doing an environmental impact statement. That is not the case here.
Dominic, thank you for doing that. I think just in light of, like I said, in light of the public comments, I think it was worth the few minutes of explanation.
Of course.
I wanted to be known to this board in our decision-making, but also to the public. So I apologize for asking you.
No, and I did say earlier I got paid by the minute. So,
But I appreciate it.
Did I say word? I mean, and this is true, I am not, I apologize.
Now it's good stuff on the road.
Thank you.
Get it on there.
I like that.
So since our last meeting, applicant team has provided a traffic impact study for our review. So at this time, I do want to ask our engineering consultant at CPL to provide a summary of their comment letter.
So, not that long ago, I asked our traffic engineer, Dave Hastings, to come up with some sort of a scope for a traffic study for this project, and that was at the request of Aaron Werner from AKRF. So I reached out to Dave, and he came back and provided an email that laid out what he thought should be in a traffic impact analysis for this project, which I forwarded over to Aaron Werner. And they turned around and submitted a traffic study, and Dave Hastings reviewed it. As soon as he got it, he reviewed it, and basically his responses, I'm going to summarize, but the report includes all the elements that were requested in his scope. It collected 10 days of traffic data in October for 2 consecutive weekends, because this is kind of more of a weekend project. It showed the weekend and weekday volumes were similar, with different hourly distributions. It identified the peak hours. He says the correct peak hours for weekdays and weekends to be used in the analysis, so I think he felt that they did that appropriately. It also provided detail on how the trips, generated trips were estimated, and gave a good explanation, was logical. He didn't have any concerns about the methodology for the trip volumes that were presented, and the volumes estimated in distribution patterns are reasonable. And then he talked a bit about the levels of service for the intersection on Route 9D, that those were appropriate, and that there was sufficient capacity on the roadway to handle the traffic in and out of the proposed site. Speed data collected was appropriate, and crash history shows no concerns, and they measured the site distances appropriately. And basically his conclusion is that there are no safety or traffic-related concerns with the development, and that the driveway modifications are subject to review, of course, and approval by New York State DOT. So he was satisfied with the result, felt it was appropriately and reasonably and logically done.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
I do want to ask the board if they have any comments on the traffic study. I have a few of my own, but I'd like to at least ask the board for their thoughts on the traffic study.
I don't.
All right, I'm not hearing any, so I'll jump in with a few
Yeah, do it.
points
Go
that
for
I had. And, for me, a concern is turning Duchess Manor into a use that's going to receive more traffic than it did when it was Duchess Manor. The speed limit on Route 9D in this location is 55 miles an hour from the report, and in my mind, there's a potential for very rapid acceleration out of the parking lot onto 9D to get into traffic, and also deceleration, very quick deceleration to enter the site. And the traffic study said that although accidents are uncommon in this area, they did say that of the accidents that were listed, the most common was a rear-end accident. So I could see the possibility of rear-end accidents increasing if this application is approved, because right now, Route 90 has one travel lane each direction. So a comment I had is there a possibility to add a turning lane into or out of the site? Are there other mitigation measures that this application could possibly consider? Because I think this change is going to increase the probability of accidents. Another comment I had is about the queue that could build up on the northbound side of Route 9D for vehicles trying to enter the site. As vehicles are coming in the southbound direction, somebody going north may have to wait to make that turn in. They're kind of now hanging out on 9D on the northbound side in a 55-mile-an-hour zone. On a busy day, I could see someone, needing to come to a complete stop. So I think that creates, that'll happen a lot more often with this application. And I also think that if somebody's trying to find this site on Route 9D, and they accidentally drove past it, the traffic study did not consider what roads one might take to turn back around. Because these roads would now experience an increase of traffic from unfamiliar drivers. So, those were three items that jumped out at me with the traffic study that I had concerns about, that I'd like to at least, I don't necessarily need an answer tonight, but I think there's things that I'd like to hear a response to at a future meeting. So,
Sure.
I don't know if...
Well, one thing that I've done before with Dave Hastings, when the board had very specific, I take notes, of course, but when the board has very specific questions about traffic, what I will have him do is watch and listen to that portion of the meeting. And I'll shoot him an email also mentioning some of these concerns, to see, how he would suggest handling that. And then, I don't know if you want to have your traffic folks kind of do the same thing.
Talk to them. I think we also need to have a conversation with DOT, because it's their road. And when we had that neighborhood meeting, there's a sense from the neighbors that there are accidents that happen in there, and a lot of it is people trying to get around when they're coming up that hill, it seems like. They don't like getting stuck behind somebody, so we already promised to have a conversation with DOT to talk about would they be willing to lower the speed limit there, what other traffic calming things they would want to see in order to do that. So, because they are lowering it in the breakneck area, right? So it's this one little patch of 55 now.
Yeah, and understood, some of my comments are items that DOT would have to opine
Sure.
on, but there's certainly things that jumped out to me, and, you know, from CPL standpoint, if they could provide input, or at least in conversation with DOT, I think they should be discussed, so.
Great.
I put it out there for those purposes.
That sounds good, and I just want to add in, living in the New Paltz area and going through the gunks a lot, that you see a lot of folks trying, well, what's evolved over the last, I would say, 20 years is people would often just park someplace if they had a favorite spot they wanted to go see, like Awasting Falls. And eventually what happened, the state took over some land near Mohonk Preserve, and eventually what happened is they developed a single entrance that went into a really big parking area, and signage leading them in, and the effect overall has been fewer pedestrians walking along the roadway and a lot less crazy traffic and cars parked on the road. And so that was kind of the response by the preserve and the state, was to channel people into appropriate parking areas so that they weren't willy-nilly parking or hanging out on the road. And I guess, so when I saw this project come in, the first thing I thought was, I've been up and down 90 many times, and I've actually been the person parking practically on a hillside to go climb up and get on some radio tower, you know, and look around at the view many years ago. But, you know, I remembered that it seemed like, you know, it was fun to do, but on the other hand, you could see how it was hazardous when there really isn't much of a defined shoulder in many of those places. So that's just my overall take on the utility of having a site where people know they can go. Many sites, I guess, up and down this. But again, I will have Dave Hastings listen to this part of the video and provide some feedback.
This changes people's behaviors quite a bit from what they're accustomed to in this area.
Sure.
So there's certainly a concern, and one that should be at least explored further. So
and
that's all I'm trying to say at this point.
I think it's good, and I also think, I think lowering the speed limit is probably a good idea, but again, that's DOT, and I think you're absolutely appropriate in saying that this new facility will sort of disrupt traffic patterns, whatever people are used to doing in that site.
And Duchess Manor was, you know, they had events and people would turn in. I mean, but I don't, you know, their lot was not nearly as large as what we're going to be encountering here.
Right.
And it will be used a lot more frequently than Duchess Manor ever was used.
Oh,
so a lot of that needs to come into consideration.
Yep. So I'll provide feedback from Dave when he.
All right. I'll ask the board again, I don't know if there's any other comments on the traffic study at this point.
No, not on the traffic study.
Okay.
I just, I wanted to just say one more thing about the segmentation stuff. Yeah, that was a big concern of mine. I'm glad you explained it again, Dominic, but, and I feel that, at least on this board's side at this point, I don't know if there's anything else we could do. We've referred it to the agency that if they felt there was segmentation, they would just take it over. They would say, no, we want to be lead agency on this. They've given us that, so they don't see segmentation. Even if, you know, we had some doubts, they don't want this part of it. It's almost like they're not taking this part of it from us.
Well, I think what they're doing, you know, and you know, what's apparent that they're doing is they're deferring to the town of Fishkill as it relates to environmental impacts associated with this particular property.
Okay.
You know, and so rather than the state making decisions as to, you know, how, you know, this property should be redeveloped, and utilized, for this aspect of it, they are deferring to you, which is not always the case.
Right.
10, 15 years ago, in the Department of Environmental Conservation in particular, used to like to challenge local governments on lead agency on certain projects, saying, oh no, like, you're not capable of conducting the environmental review that we think that we're capable of. And so there used to be lead agency disputes, which don't really happen anymore, thankfully enough. Okay. But I think in this case, what you should recognize is that you're being entrusted with the environmental review as it relates specifically to this property within the town of Fishkill.
Yep. Okay. And I know I think we can do a better job.
Without doubt.
So I did want to ask the CPL team this as well, because this month the memo was for the traffic impact study. I believe CPL had a comment letter dated October 10th, with engineering comments.
Yep.
I don't recall, I guess, correct me if I'm wrong, have those comments been sufficiently addressed at this point?
No, there hasn't been another submission. The only submittal was the traffic study.
Oh, okay, so.
There wasn't like a whole submittal and there was a traffic study. It was
Right.
just the traffic study.
Okay.
So that's why it only went to Dave.
Understood. I just wanted to make sure. I remember that
No,
memo was out
I
there.
understand.
and
I was looking at it going, wait a minute,
there was
where's
about-
my stuff?
I think it was about 6 to 8 pages worth of comments, so I just want to make sure that that's still to be addressed as well.
Understood.
So I think at this point, we've certainly talked at length about one of the motions this board would consider tonight. I'll throw it out to the CPL team and to Dominic as well. Are there any other actions that this board may wish to consider, just in light of where things stand at the moment?
I don't think so at this time
I think with
because,
the engineering comments kind of hanging out there and needing addressing, we wouldn't really do much else at this point other than just the motion for lead agency. But again, I just want to ask for your thoughts.
yeah.
I think that's all you really should consider tonight.
And there are other planning and seeker comments that remain to be addressed. It's just the traffic was the focus of this submittal from the applicant.
Understood.
So that's, yeah. Good.
Just, I don't know if you have any other comments or thoughts at this time about any of the actions the board be taking tonight?
No, I think that was the only action.
Okay, so with that, I'll ask the board, is there a motion for the Town of Fishkill Planning Board to serve as seeker lead agency for Duchess Manor restoration and site redesign, site development plan, and special use permit?
So moved.
Felix moves it. Do I have a second?
Second.
I heard Bob a second. Any discussion from the board? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And no abstentions, because we have VJ voting, so that's a 7-0. Motion passes. All right, I think that's all we'll be covering for tonight's meeting, so
Great. Thank you.
we'll talk to you soon.
Yep, we'll be back.
Yeah.
While John finds his way back into the room, I will, last item on the agenda here is Fishkill Medical Park, site development plan, special use permit and subdivision, board to review the submission made by the applicant's representative on November 26, 2024. Good
Thank you.
evening.
Right, good evening. Again, Jeff Kane with Kirchhoff Associates, joined by Bill Pulvol, site engineer, Mike McCormick, project architect, and Becky Volka, who is our counsel on this project. And again, thank you for having us again this evening. We've made I think a full presentation. We've gotten comments back from the CPL team, and I really think our role here tonight is want to hear if there are additional comments from the board and see where we can move on to our next step, I think, of resolving some of the comments we've heard from the team so far.
All right, well, do you want to give us a little update on, what the plan is looking like now?
Sure. The plan is really, the buildings have really remained the same. Two medical buildings, about a 30,000 square foot, two-story building. That's building 1, and a 11,000 square foot single-story building. Those have remained the same. The parking's remained the same. Really, the biggest site plan change is the entrance onto Snook Road. There was a concern raised about two means of entry into the project. So we have essentially divided that entry, given a boulevard entrance. So you have an entry and an exit lane there. So if one lane gets blocked, you've got adequate access into and out of the site, both for both the people who work there or emergency first responders need to get in or out. It's just kind of a safer way to manage that traffic flow. Other than that, again, the project has really remained static. We've added some nodes, we've added a little landscaping, we've updated the SWIP. We've started to kind of work through some of those engineering questions and comments. But from a plan perspective, that's really what's the majority of what was changed.
Any questions or observations from planning board members before we ask CPL to go through the memo? All right.
Not right now.
Okay, well, why don't we ask Liz and John to summarize CPL's memo and take it from there.
Okay, so, I have to say it was refreshing to have such a responsive submittal. So I was pleased to see a lot more information on the plans. Let's see. I'll get into the nuts and bolts a little tiny bit, but I felt like this submittal was comprehensive enough that, for one thing, I was able to kind of dive into looking at the subdivision a little bit more, and I think we have a little bit more information in terms of possibly taking a step on seeker review. Let's see, for example, I believe this could be classified as an unlisted action, and the board might consider initiating circulation for lead agency. So that's one consideration for tonight. One of the comments I had made before had to do with the CPU having to do with connecting people in places, and prior comments asks for sidewalks to be constructed from the site driveway over along Snook Road to the other nearby businesses. So there was progress made there in terms of internal sidewalks coming out to the driveway. I have a few more comments about internal sidewalks connecting to some of the building entrances. And then I think there's another concept here that might work, and this kind of comes a little bit from the whole tree preservation idea. So the response from the applicant indicated, in lieu of actually constructing the sidewalk all the way along Snook Road, they indicated they do not have site control, but that there was a possibility of making a monetary contribution to the town to extend the sidewalk along Snook Road, and that I'd like the planning board to discuss it. And I know that there's another concept of a sidewalk improvement fund that may or may not be used initially in this area, but it would be used for priority, sidewalk improvements throughout the town. So that's kind of a broader look at that. Let's see. The lighting levels are generally very reasonable on the site as they're proposed. There is a pretty nicely prepared lighting plan, and the only concern is that there's a little bit of a concentration of light right at the entrance. And I made a brief comment about, well, first of all, I'm pleased to see the connection with sewer and water in terms of protecting the aquifer. There's one comment about low-flow fixtures in the on-site bathroom, so I just wanted to see a little bit more detail about that. And we've seen a couple of architectural sort of illustrations, but I think it would be helpful at some point to see architectural elevations that the board could respond to. And then I dove into a little bit of review with subdivision. So again, there's a decent amount of information, but there are a number of standards and requirements in subdivision review that it would be good to start to address to kind of progress the application forward. And then in regards to traffic, David Hastings from CPL took a look at the traffic impact study, and it was resubmitted after his prior comments, and his conclusion was that all the comments had been addressed, and that he agrees with the conclusion that the development will have a minimal impact on the adjacent road network. So those are my main points on that. And again, I will dive into the subdivision a little bit more in the next submittal. But in terms of procedure, even though there are a number of comments that the application is still a little incomplete in terms of moving forward towards setting a hearing, it seems it would be appropriate for the planning board to consider action to initiate seeker regarding lead agency, so.
And John, do you have any engineering comments that you want to
No,
highlight?
they addressed basically all the SWIP comments, which was nice to see. I think there was one table that needed to be updated.
Yeah, a lot of them were resolved.
And one of the major items is their plan to tie into the sewer, but we're going to be meeting with them next week on that with KMO, the town's water sewer operator, to hopefully get a clearer picture on how that's going to work.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, and actually I was especially pleased to see, you know, positive action about the sewer connection on this project, because, you know, we have other larger scale projects where that's still a question mark, so it was nice to see that. Because it's protective of the aquifer. That's an important part of that. Any questions?
When they did the traffic study, did it show with Continental Commons completed with a hotel and a restaurant and a small shopping center there?
I mean, did it sort of look at other nearby developments?
Well, I'm talking about Continental Commons, which is right off Snook Road.
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay, I just want to,
Yes, right.
I look like the experts.
Yes. No, we built on the Continental Commons. In fact, we used the same consultant to make sure we had the same background information. It was specifically, I went to LaBella and asked them to prepare the traffic report, so we would have their background in the report. So.
Yeah, I saw somewhere they were going to change the timing, but DOT has to change the timing on the...
Right, there's be a couple of, the only changes I think that were required as part of this application were a couple of minor adjustments on a couple of signals. So it was, very, very minor changes because there's so much flow out there already on the 9 corridor.
Because I don't remember, we've had a crosswalk crossing there too. I think, did we?
There is a-
For
there
Continental
is-
Commons crossing over to the...
Yes.
We had that.
Yes.
Yes, correct.
Some time ago.
Yeah, I guess that was the reason that I thought about the sidewalk from this out there, because I'm not sure it's that far away, but there are sidewalks all along Route 9, pretty much on both sides. And I know that there's a crossing at the end of Snook Road, and there's the gas station and convenience store. So I guess there's potential out there for people if they want to walk. And I guess the image that I had was somebody being dropped off for medical appointments, and then, you know, having maybe some time to walk down the road. I don't think it's much of a distance.
Well, I was more concerned if they're going to put in the pancake house, the people are going to go there for lunch,
walking from,
Right.
you know,
Yeah, it's a pretty short distance.
it's a short distance,
It
but
is.
we had sidewalks, and it's easy to do it to walk it on the road.
Yep, absolutely.
Yes.
It's about 700 feet, which is, so it's a ways, right? It's not that short. And interestingly, I was looking at the Continental Commons plan, you know, there's no sidewalk on the Continental Commons frontage even, you know, so
Yeah,
again,
well,
part of.
there will be.
It wasn't continued, and that's.
Well, yeah, you mean on Snook Road frontage,
Right,
there is
right,
not, but on the frontage on Route 9, there will be.
It's on Route 9, yeah.
Sure, absolutely, on the Route 9
So-
frontage, but that's, right, we're just talking about how far, right, that walk is. Right, again, it wasn't something that could be tied into, which is why we thought that, you know, as part of our contribution to the complete streets, which are really the complete streets are really kind of a town goal. We're, you know, more than willing to participate with the town on building the sidewalks where you think they're most appropriate and going to get your biggest bang for the buck.
Well, we
there.
have the historical site,
Mhm.
and then we have the water property, the well, and then we have your property.
Mhm.
But we also may get some walkers from a potential trail on the south side of 84 that we were discussing in another project, right? So that may
Yes.
be more walking traffic. It certainly will be more walking traffic than what we have today.
That was on the warehouse and trucking facility. And that was also because if you're driving a truck and you're going to go to a restaurant, you're not going to drive your truck out down there. And a lot of, you know, those drivers are riding bikes or walking.
Yeah, so just talking a little bit more about a possible monetary donation to the town, I mean, what were you thinking about in terms of like, well, the dollar amounts, how would it be set up? Obviously, this will take some further discussion with the town on all of those related aspects.
Right. We didn't know if the right next step would be perhaps a meeting with either the supervisor or the town board and some subset of this board or the whole board. Again, to have maybe the two bodies or some subset of the two bodies together to talk through the details about how it gets set up. And I mean, does that make sense as a next step?
Yeah, or even if the town, you know, wants to
Or even they
consider
even
it.
want it, right? That's, right, that's,
yeah.
right.
I mean, it's very similar, as Liz was beginning to imply, to this tree fund donation that we're getting, working out with the Homeland Towers applicant group. It seems like a very interesting idea, and I think, you know, to pursue implementation of the CPU, the comprehensive plan update, it would make sense for the town to establish some kind of a sidewalk and/or streetscape improvements fund with, you know, very specific criteria and requirements for what they want to accomplish, largely implementing these priority areas in the town's comprehensive plan update and connections, because that connections of pedestrian facilities was a big part of that comprehensive plan update. So that Route 9 area already is going to be, is planned for sidewalk improvements with these various projects that have been approved already. This would make a lot of sense to connect to all that. And the facilities that are already in the shopping center and that are planned in the Continental Commons site plan. So it's a very interesting idea, and I think it's something that the planning board, I think, would be very interested in helping you figure out how to approach the town with that idea. Bike racks was another thing that I was glad to see suggested to be added to the plan, and I looked and looked and looked. I know the materials you submitted indicated that bike racks have been added to the plans,
Yeah,
but I could not find them.
I had the same problem, but Bill and I, right, it was, yes, they were going to go on, and somehow they just didn't make the plan, so our apologies on that, because I did the same thing. Where did Bill put them exactly, and I couldn't find them, and I found out too late that they just didn't make it, so we will get them on the plans.
So, and the county has, some good guidelines and details on how those can be implemented, so, and then those should be shown in the detailed parts of the plans also.
Absolutely, right.
Okay, I thought I was not going crazy and looking at the plans, although
I went through the legend a couple of times to make sure I wasn't missing the symbol.
Yeah,
No, I
yeah.
had the same, right.
And, but again, I'm impressed also with how responsive your team has been to incorporating a lot of the comments that we've made already on the plans. The tree preservation plan and the landscape plan look very good.
Thank you.
I did want to check with the planning board members and just see whether anyone is thinking about perhaps a site visit to this site, since it's kind of an interesting site and an interesting development in that area. I've sort of done a drive-by, but haven't really had a chance to look specifically, onto the site. Just wondering if anyone else has had the opportunity to check it out, and whether we should maybe think about some kind of a joint site visit.
Is it marked off at all where the entrance is going to be?
Well, there's an existing entrance now off of Snook Road, and that's
Is that what you're going to use?
pretty much right there, right? And we're like 10 feet over from that or something?
Well, that's okay.
The entrance that's there now would be where the exit is on this particular plan. So, right there.
How far up is it from the water tower?
It's from that driveway, it's about 100 to 150 feet.
I'm sorry, from where to where?
From the water plant's driveway to our driveway. I'd have to look at the plan for sure, but I believe it's about 100 to 150 feet in that range.
And is that entrance drivable?
Yes. Yeah, there's a gate. We have a gate on the property.
Here we go.
Is there more to, I've driven up and down Snook Road, just
It's a subdivision.
to look at the
part of
woods.
subdivision process.
I didn't walk in.
I'm just wondering if any board members thought it would be helpful to have a group, go in. It's going to be pretty limited on where we would go, because you don't want to really go through the wetland areas and the wooded areas, but to get a good feeling of how the disturbed part of the site has already happened, and, just see how the plans fit in with what's going on the site.
I find site visits very helpful when we're developing in wetlands or woodland areas, but this happens to be one where we're developing where it was already cleared, right?
Yeah,
and that's
right.
That's my own personal it's been an area that it was cleared with the Oasis Ministry site. Some of the brush has grown back up, but there's not a lot of not a lot to see there. But we're happy to have you there.
So certainly any members who haven't been there at all yet could go out on your own, and it's pretty easy to, just kind of pull the car over and take a glimpse at what's happening inside the site. But I just thought I'd ask. We haven't done a joint site visit in a while, and not that we need to, and not that we have to have them regularly, but.
I believe it was called the Jehovah Witnesses.
But, yeah.
That was more than a year back.
But just wanted to see what people were thinking about that.
We could, we'd have to get lucky with the weather too.
Yeah,
right?
that-
Between
Yeah.
the rain and the
I
snow
would say
right
so.
now.
It always becomes a little complicated to set up these joint visits.
Yeah.
And so, well, think about it, and if anyone, wants to get together with even a subset of the board, several of us could just go out there together.
Sure.
All right.
I'm gonna double check.
Any other questions for the applicant?
No, not tonight.
No.
So, CPL has indicated that this does appear to be an unlisted action. Dominic, do you concur with that?
I do, sir.
All right. And would it be appropriate to perhaps, along with the classification, indicate in a motion to circulate a notice of intent to involve an interested agency on
Yes,
this
sir.
one? All right. So if the board is in agreement with all that, would someone like to make a motion to classify this proposed Fishkill Medical Park as an unlisted action pursuant to seeker, and to circulate a notice of intent to involve an interested agencies for the planning board to serve as lead agency to conduct a coordinated review?
So moved.
Second.
Felix moves it, and Anthony seconds it. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? So that carries 7-0. So, any other questions for us?
So, yeah, I guess the question would be, how do we move the conversation forward between your board and the town board on this idea of is that going to come from you first? What are your thoughts about how to administratively move that?
Do you have any suggestions, Dominic?
Well, first of all, there's no formal referral typically from this board, to
No, I
other
understand
board.
not a formal, but.
If I may, so I think you're free to go to the town board and contact the supervisor and request to be on an agenda. I think, as you may have heard from the Homeland Towers discussion, is that the offer of the donation in that case, ended up being a condition of the approval, that they finalize that donation with the town board. So, to answer your question, you can start that discussion now, or you can have it later.
So, but let me maybe ask my question a little differently, because what I thought we were talking about was having a discussion between either the supervisor or some subset of the town board and the chair or some subset of the planning board, rather than us just going to the town board with a request. And so what I was asking for, is there some way to, what's the right way to start that informal, not formal conversation?
I think you should call the supervisor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was going to suggest.
Cause you a call.
I was going to suggest, why don't you contact the supervisor and also invite the highway superintendent, Carmine Isabah,
Yeah.
because
Okay. Yes.
this is a town road that would involve the possibility of a sidewalk, and even see what he thinks about that possibility. I mean,
He may want
say
trees,
that's
is what
just
I
not-
heard earlier,
He might
right?
just say it's not a good idea. Right.
Trees
so
and
that's-
sidewalks.
Hold on. So that's the other part of it, is this, the same that we're looking at the tree fund, and so the tree fund is kind of linked to our recently enacted tree preservation law. This idea of the sidewalk extension is linked directly to the CPU, the comprehensive plan update. So both, I think, are well positioned in the town's laws and plans for the town board to pursue these types of things. It's just that it's even less specific with things like sidewalk improvements on certain areas, how the town board might handle a donation for funds to build sidewalks or streetscape improvements. Maybe we want to expand it to a sidewalk and streetscape improvement program of some sort.
So we're happy to reach out to the town supervisor, happy to include the highway superintendent. Would you also like to be at that meeting?
Sure. As planning board chair, I'd be happy to attend a meeting like that.
Okay.
And then we can perhaps report back once that type of meeting is set up to the whole planning board.
And if, I don't know if you found the CPU on the town's website, but it's on there, and it's pretty easy to word search. It's very, so you could just kind of go in there and look up sidewalks and everything will just pop up.
Yeah, I think our response
Yeah,
is that,
probably
right, that
did.
we've clearly, we've, yes, absolutely gone through.
It's
yeah.
definitely in the implementation plan to get this started, so.
And so there's that meeting we could set up. I think there were a number of additional recommendations for, in CPL's memo, to follow up on. So depending on when, the timing of these things happens, and if the submissions are made in time for the January meeting, we could plan on having you back for the January meeting, but if not, it could wait until the next one.
Okay. We'll see what we can put together between now and the submission date. So, but thank you.
Okay. Good. Well, thanks.
Thank you. Enjoy your holidays.
Happy
All right,
holidays.
happy
yes.
holidays.
All right, so it wasn't on the agenda, but there's this one additional item.
Well, I can't.
Let's just get this stuff out of the way.
What?
So, as I mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, I'd like to ask the board to go into a closed session to seek the advice of the planning board's attorney. So this is something that our consultants from the CPL don't need to stay for. And although we might need to come back and take some action in open session, I don't think we need to keep you guys here for that. So,
Thank you.
Thanks for all your help, and happy holidays.
Yes,
Yeah, happy holidays to
So we'll be
everyone.
talking with you further before then, but. So, again, this is about the planning board's appeal of an interpretation of the building inspector zoning administrator that the board filed with the ZBA.
Did you make a
Did
motion?
we go?
Shut down the,
So we need to shut down, yep. And we need to do a motion to enter a closed session, so we'll wait till things shut down to
Yes,
get
and-
that underway.
And this would be a motion to go into closed session for the advice of counsel.
Yes.
Thank you.
So,
So we have the motion?
yes.
We have a
so-
motion, but it actually hasn't been made yet.
So would somebody like to, would somebody like to make? Okay. What are you moving?
Then we go into closed session.
I got a second.
Anthony moves it.
Happy
Felix,
holidays, happy New Year.
thanks, you too. Felix seconds it. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? So we are now in closed session, so hopefully.
Let's make sure that we're...
Actually,